Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. I'm Alex.
I'm Julio, and thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Help promote the algorithm and spread the word.
You can also find us on SoundCloud to subscribe and review. And don't forget to visit our main website, wearethecontrarians.com.
Follow us on Twitter at Contrarian Prime, and to like us on Facebook, visit facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
And if you have the willpower to keep up with our pretentious ramblings, you can follow us individually at Contrarian Alex for myself and at Ovnio for Julio. That's OVNIO.
Now, time for the podcast. All right, I am reporting for Contrarians Corner for Halloween 2018, also known as Halloween, the Danny McBride edition.
Or Halloween Returns at one point, Halloween 3D. I think there was the idea of just calling it Halloween 2 again, even not Halloween 2 again, but Halloween 2 as well.
I wish it was Halloween 2 again.
And it would have started with Laurie and Michael saying, "Together again, again." I think this is a joke at one point, just because it's fucking Danny McBride and David Gordon Green. But there was at one point a rumor it was going to be called H4O, and I can't, in good faith, believe that's accurate.
Oh god!
But
how about
at the end of the day,
Halloween? That should have.
I was just about to say you beat me to it. It was the joke we've made time and time again. From all my research, it sounded like they just thought, well, fuck it, we'll just call it Halloween. The goal was they didn't want to alienate anyone or make anyone think that they had to have any knowledge coming into it, which obviously paid off in spades because this movie made well over $200 million. But yes, the Contrarians, myself and Julio, are here to bring finality to Haddonfield Nights, our 6-part Halloween series spanning the months of September and October, and again, what we've referred to as the spookiest year of 2020. If you are listening to this the day of release, happy Halloween to you wherever you are in the world, and thank you for tuning in. If you're an American listening to this, happy Halloween to you as well, and you know that we are just 3 days away from what is going to be one of the most stressful and taxing days that I will live through in my lifetime. So I'm glad that before we get there, we can bring a close to this extremely enjoyable saga that's the Contrarians we have done over the past 2 months, and also potentially bring a little levity to y'all by watching a crazy large white man murdering a bunch of innocent people.
Wait, so I thought Election Day was the 5th.
It's the 3rd, baby.
Is it? Well, it's a good thing I'm voting early because I would have missed it.
You're fucking Jerry Gergich, man. Like, you came in. Wait, is today the day I'm supposed to vote? I'm voting early also, but I took off. I put in my request today for work. I put in a PTO for the 4th, and
I should do that.
I told my manager I'm going to need the day off one way or another because I already know I'm going to be extremely hungover one way or the other. So It's a necessary evil. Here nor there, I'm sure we'll have plenty of lamenting to do when that time comes if the worst happens, and we'll have plenty of celebrating to do if what we are hoping for the sake of our future and our country happens.
Never a dull moment in America.
Dull, is not the right word. It's been a while since we had a proud moment. And speaking of, colloquialisms and local pride, the town of Haddonfield, Illinois had been safe for 40 years. There was a sense of calm that swelled over them, and they were able to get back to their normal lives. Haddonfield, Illinois had once again become a Pleasantville-type environment that was until it was Halloween in the year 2018, when their worst fears came back to life once again. Welcome to the Contrarians, and welcome to the finale of Haddonfield Nights. My name is Alex. I am joined, as always, in every episode in this journey down the path of the contrary by my co-host Julio. Julio, we have arrived. How are you doing on this fateful Tuesday evening?
We made it. We both survived. We're still alive. The coronavirus didn't take us down. Michael Myers didn't take us down. We're unstoppable. This is my second time watching this movie. I have a lot more to say about it than I did the first time, I think. I blame Haddonfield Nights for that. Because my knowledge of the Halloween franchise has expanded in a way that watching this 2018 edition of the Michael Myers story it awakened new things in me that were not there before. I still don't think that it hits me the way that it hits you, because as we've established in every episode since September started, you are the Halloween fan here. You're the man that loves the franchise, warts and all. And I've slowly admired the franchise from afar.
My hope is that when we get to because obviously being the final episode, we're going to do a little bit of a recap and kind of discuss what we learned, Palmer, and our favorites from doing this. I honestly hope when this concludes, you're going to explain to me that Halloween 3 is the best one and all the rest of them are just okay. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Oh, I don't want to spoil it, so I'll just bite my tongue.
I was going to say, I already have been fucking with the timeline so much because I talked about, hey, you're listening to this on Halloween Day, and then 3 days from now is the presidential election, and then I said it was a Tuesday evening, and so I was gonna get mad at myself for already, less than 10 minutes into this podcast, just fucking with listeners' minds about what the timeline is. But to be fair, the Halloween franchise has no real, care for fucking with viewers' minds, so why should we?
Yeah, no, this is DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths or 0 Hour or whatever, any of those big cosmic events that just reset everything. They just get rid of all the stuff they don't like, and who cares if there are people that like those things?
We did a pretty good job of piecing this together. Like I said, from the get-go, the phrase I used was the canonical chronology, and starting with the Rob Zombie Halloween and bringing this up to our finale right here, we have pieced these all together sequentially. And we had the bonus episode of Halloween 3, which is just kind of removed from it all, but we covered the 2007 remake, the original, Part 6, and then H2O, and then bringing us to here. So while the canon is a bit different, I think we did a pretty good job. We hit all of the notes, the highs and the lows in this franchise. I think we did the Halloween franchise pretty good here. What
I find interesting of this little set of Halloween movies that we decided to explore is that we hit the outliers in a way, because things like Halloween 3, Curse of Michael Myers, like H2O. I mean, I'll be the first to accuse the franchise of repeating itself, because it does. It's a slasher movie. In the end, it's always Halloween, whatever number it is, it's always a slasher movie. But there are times in the franchise where it just went a little more out there than they normally did, right? And I think that those 3, 6, and H2O, they tried to do something a little different, regardless of whether they succeeded or not. They were just pushing, trying to go somewhere. So it felt appropriate to just kind of sandwich all those between the original Halloween and the most recent Halloween, which are more traditional in a way. So good job, because that's all you. I had nothing to do with the scheduling of these episodes.
So if this is your first time listening to the Contrarians, which, as I've said, for every stop in Haddonfield Nights, it's very possible, because these are a franchise. The Halloween franchise is one of very impassioned fans, passionate fans, and very emboldened in their opinion fans. So if this is your first time stumbling upon our podcast, thank you so much. Hope you'll make it till the end here so we can have a bit of fun, a bit of banter, and then also discuss some real thoughts on the film. If you're a returning listener, please grant us a little bit of time as we explain what we do here to any and all potential new listeners. So, myself and Julio here on the Contrarians like to rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine, as we say. Find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is highly rated, typically about 90% and above is where we shoot those movies that are often known as certified fresh, and then maybe talk about why those movies should be taken down a few pegs. Conversely, find a movie, we usually aim for about 30% and below, movies known as rotten, make a case for their positive merit and why maybe they got a raw deal, a bad hand dealt. This is a little bit different, as we've kind of done with several installments in Haddonfield Nights. This movie is at 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, which doesn't quite fall into, our we aim for those upper tier. But as we've done so far, it's definitely on one side of the spectrum. So we're going to be treating this as a certified fresh movie, so to speak. So in the first portion of the podcast, known as Contrarians Corner, we'll be making a case for maybe why this movie isn't as good as a lot of people think. With that in mind, for all of our actual opinions and also just kind of tying this in to our overall thoughts on the franchise, Julio, where does that get done?
That gets done the second half of the podcast, aptly titled Real Talk. That's where we talk really. That's where you'll find out how we really feel. Sometimes it matches what we said in Contrarians Corner. Sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it's somewhere in between. And usually we try to keep our true opinions somewhat from each other. So while I may have an idea of how Alex feels about Halloween 2018, and he may have an idea of how I feel about the movie, we don't know for sure, usually, until we start hashing it out during Real Talk. And you guys get to listen to it, which is the best part.
The creative minds that brought us the likes of Pineapple Express, Eastbound and Down, what was that one they did with Natalie Portman that didn't
Your
do too well?
Highness. Your Highness.
Academy Award winner Natalie Portman. Thank you. That would have been after she won also. My God. Anyway, here nor there. The creative minds that brought you such gems are here to also bring the final and most recent installment in the Halloween franchise. But again, 79%, it's up there. And I remember specifically the critics were pretty gaga about this. Julio, what were they saying?
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling that at some point its tomato meter score was higher, and then I think over time it's maybe lowered. But I got a few quotes from the Rotten Tomatoes website, all fresh. If you want to listen to the rotten quotes, stick around for Real Talk. But let's start with Cameron Frew from Movie Corner, who says, the apex slasher of the decade, electric, ultra-violent, and thematically resonant with today. I'm just going to kick of anybody using the word apex, because I think of Chronicle and the apex predator. Apex slasher of the decade, even.
The apex predator, and for any and all pro wrestling fans, is Randy Orton. That's one of his nicknames, so that's immediately what I thought of.
Well,
so,
see, it works on so
trade.
many levels. Damian Levy from Jamaica Gleaner says, Michael may be a killer of few words, but the film has so much to say. And I would say that Michael is a killer of no words at all.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. He spoke in one of the movies, and that timeline has been completely eradicated by this movie. So,
Stephen Rommel from The Australian says, now, with the 11th movie in the franchise, we have something a little daring. That's a little harsh on the previous 9 sequels. I think that they were...
I was going to say, Halloween 4 would like a moment for rebuttal, sir.
And finally, Amanda Griever from the Daily Times, Tennessee, says, Halloween might be a so-so horror movie, or it might be amazing. I honestly don't care. It's a film about a strong woman standing up and doing what it takes to protect her family. On that mark, it hits every note. Well, Amanda. I think a running joke during Contrarians Corner is going to be about how this movie hates men more than Juno. But
I would more say that that kind of glosses over the fact that her child was taken away from her at 12 years old due to neglective parenting.
But that pays off, Alex. It was worth it. It saved her life.
It absolutely does. In one of the Oscar clips of the film, it definitely pays off. So, as we've been accustomed to in Haddonfield Nights, we're kicking it back to Smith's Grove. This movie begins on October 29th of 2018. As this movie was released shortly before that. So this movie actually took place in the future. Very daring and cunning ambition from David Gordon Green and Danny McBride. Not unlike the creators of Jason X. Very cunning and daring ambition.
I guess that explains the setup of Smith's Grove, which is pretty futuristic. It's Smith's Grove like we haven't seen it before. Where they've gotten rid of rooms.
No, dude, I was going to say, it's not just Smith's Grove. Haddonfield in this timeline has become this burgeoning fucking metropolitan area. Like they have an Applebee's and they have this state-of-the-art mental facility. Their high school is like one of those big schools you would see on for anyone that went to college in my same time frame between 2005 and 2010, there was a show called Two-A-Days on MTV that was like a big high school show, and that's the kind of setup they have here. So Haddonfield is no longer, the Halloween 1 through I guess 5 when they just have the one drugstore and the one gas station with the cookie woman that all the cops know about. So it's definitely a different Haddonfield that we've established here. And to make you certain of what year you're in, and watching this now, it's not that, and obviously the irony of us trying to make a joke about podcasters, but 20, 30, 40 years from now, whenever this movie's viewed, they'll be like, oh, of course they had podcasters in this movie.
Yeah, it's what I've come to ever since our Boyhood episodes, what I would call a Richard Linklater moment, where it just really hammers at home like where you are in the world, in the time stream. So of course, with the most obvious reference here, it has to be two British podcasters doing their version of, I don't know, Serial. Just digging deep. I don't know. It's just so obvious. I wish that they had been just regular journalists. It really adds nothing to the story that they're podcasters. It's just so they can use the word podcast.
And they're also British, so you have to wonder the whole international incident that this caused. The fact that these European journalists came over to get an interview and then they were murdered by some crazy white American. But they show up and they meet the doctor. What is this guy's name?
Not Loomis.
I have many times in my notes, not Loomis. Haluk Bilginer. Sorry, I know I'm mispronouncing your name, sir. I apologize. Who plays Dr. Ranbir Sartain, who is Michael's psychiatrist, and right from the get-go establishes that he was a protege, a student of Dr. Loomis up until Loomis left us.
Yeah, he is he's so eager to prove to us, the audience, that he is a worthy successor. He can't wait to throw his credentials at the screen and go like, "Listen, I learned from Loomis. I was his protege, and I'm taking this Michael Myers case as seriously, if not more seriously than he did, because he was convinced that this was a dead end, and I still want to understand what's going on inside that mind." He's trying to he's pandering to me, Alex. The past 5 episodes, that's been my thing. I've been all about what makes Michael Myers tick. Even Curse of Michael Myers kind of slapped me in the face for asking that question. and now this guy is trying to get me excited again, trying to just get me enthusiastic, get me behind his character, because he's somebody, the one person that really wants to know what's going on. The podcasters, they're in it for show. They're just trying to make a spectacle. That guy, the British guy, when he pulls Michael's mask and shows it to Michael, I mean, that's just theatrics. That's no real thirst for knowledge. But this doctor, he's trying to convince us that he's the real deal. And sadly, nothing on the actor, but in the end, he's not Loomis. So
No.
That's a misstep. Why would you shoot yourself in the foot trying to create a character that would sort of replace Loomis? It's impossible. Can't be done.
I was going to say also, these journalists just come up to Michael. I guess it's, recess or something. They have all the loony bin is all out outside and soaking up the rays. And we see Michael. We do get the one over the shoulder shot where you can see his eye still fucked up from that coat hanger, which was pretty cool. Aaron, I believe the male journalist's name is, says, I got something from my friend at the Attorney General's office. He pulls out the mask, which is like a massive case of evidence in a serious murder trial or, crime. That's something that should be preserved in legal archives for eternity. And he's just like, oh, here it is. It's in my bag with my kombucha and my fucking tobacco and rolling papers.
And it's not even a surprise because the doctor, he's hanging back, but he gives him a nod, like, "Yeah, go ahead, do it." So he knew everybody was in on it.
He does have that awesome nod, like me at a bar when I'm trying to keep an eye on people and someone looks to me to see if they've had enough to drink or if they're okay to take another shot. I just give that, like, my hand out, kind of, my hand is reaching out and touching yours and nodding along with it. And this, of course, leads itself to him moderately reacting to it. And what becomes the theme of the movie is Aaron, the podcaster, the quote unquote journalist, say something. Cuts to the opening credits, which establish this entire movie is going to be a giant homage to the franchise, but specifically the original one, because I assume you caught this because it's been in such close proximity that you've watched the original, Julio. Mm-hmm. The opening credits of the original are a jack-o'-lantern falling apart. This is a jack-o'-lantern regenerating.
It's an inflatable jack-o'-lantern. That's what I put on my notes. It looks like it's being inflated, so it can be outside of a convenience store or a gas station, just kind of waving at people.
That is incorrect, actually. It was not a CG or, artificial prop at all. They actually did this with elapsing photography. I read that, and I was so happy because, as you know, and all listeners of our podcast know, I am fully in favor of practical effects. But
that's how
we
you
get
know.
The same
that's
font.
how you know they're good. When the practical effects make you think that it's CGI, that's when they've just really reached top level.
We get the same font with the neon orange glow. The torch being passed along to Miss Andy Matichuk, who plays Allison as she gets the introducing credit, much like her grandmother in the movie Jamie Lee Curtis got 40 years prior.
Paul
Stephen Rudd, excuse you. This opening credit scene leads to, you got the end of the yang. These podcasters pull up at Laurie Strode's residence in Haddonfield, which is out on the outskirts of town, where I imagine there's not much legal jurisdiction. She has a property that all that was missing in this was a Trump flag flying.
It's true.
The blue, I think he has a blue one that says Trump for America, stop the bullshit. That's the one that should be flying out in front of Laurie Strode's house in this particular incarnation. But, she's got cameras everywhere, fence system with the fucking call box. You have to call to get in. I imagine she doesn't have much Uber, or Uber Eats, I should say, or... favor is the phrase I was looking for there. Many delivery services out there. But they come up and ask if they can interview her. She kind of tells them to fuck off, and then they tell her they'll pay $3,000. And I like this guy, this fucking nerd. Like, real journalists don't pay for interviews. It's like, motherfucker, you're a podcaster.
but then that also, what podcaster is spending $3,000 on an interview with Laurie Strode? I mean, even if they were like the biggest fans ever of Laurie Strode and the Halloween franchise, $3,000 is a lot of money. So I don't know.
The pound was particularly strong to the dollar back in 2018.
Oh, there you go.
There's a famous story in the boxing world back in 2007 when a British boxer by the name of Ricky Hatton fought Floyd Mayweather, and the pound was very, very strong to the dollar at the time. I can't remember the particular reason for it, but it essentially led to just this deluge, this cacophony of Brits flying over because they were able to get fucking plane tickets for pennies on the dollar. So I imagine it's a very similar situation here in 2018 that these two journalists, podcasters, were like, holy shit, we can go to this shitty town in Illinois for $5. Let's do it.
That's why they had to be British.
Exactly. It all makes sense now. Speaking of deluge and just a complete mudslide, you got to keep up quick because the next 5 minutes of the movie introduce you to pretty much the cast for the remainder of the 2018 Halloween, as we are introduced to we see the Wiz, first of all, for any and all of my Seinfeld natives out there. Toby Huss, who plays Ray Nelson, who is the husband to Karen, played by Judy Greer. Of course, in this particular case, Karen is Laurie Strode's daughter. This isn't Judy Greer's first time on the Contrarians, is it?
No. I'm pretty sure we've... Well, obviously Elizabeth Town, where she plays Orlando Bloom's sister. I want to say she was
She
also
gets-
in Three Kings. Maybe. But I know she's just, we mentioned her constantly because it's Judy Greer. She's an institution. Which, of course, when I saw that this guy had somehow managed to marry her, I thought that was going to be a bigger revelation down the road. It was like, how did this happen? But no, there's really nothing. I mean, I guess he likes that he makes her laugh. I don't know. What's your theory here, Alex? How did the Wiz manage to not just marry Judy Greer, but have a daughter with her?
First of all, to go back to your point, yes, I knew she had some iconic moment on our podcast, and it's her in Elizabethtown under the sprinkler system when the fire alarm goes off in the community rec center.
Yes.
So first of all, that answered that question. Secondly, I mean, Toby Huss, he's a fine looking man. I mean, he definitely is. He looks at least 30 years older than her, but that's. Sometimes you just got to roll with those punches.
Well, but it's also our introduction to his character is him trying to set up mousetraps, and it takes like maybe a minute before he fucks something up and he hits his finger and then he gets peanut butter all over his crotch. It just, come on, not impressive at all. Not what I would expect. Not just Judy Greer, but the daughter of Laurie Strode. That's not what I would think she would be looking for in a mate.
Dude, and watching it this time specifically, seeing him fumble through setting up these mousetraps, I thought to myself, how did I not realize he was going to be killed with relative ease in this movie? Just seeing him have all these issues trying to put peanut butter on a mousetrap. Of course, Michael Myers is going to kill him with virtually no problem. Spoiler alert, but there it is. Whatever the case, Ray Nelson, husband to Karen, and their daughter Allison is the aforementioned Andy Matichak, who is the granddaughter to Laurie Strode and a very scholastically advanced student, very high achieving student. There's some award or something, some competition that she's entered into that's on the line. I can't remember exactly what it is. They kind of shy away from it, but the idea is she's very smart and is going to have a very successful life following high school.
She gets a ribbon.
That is it. She gets it's not a sash, is it? It's kind of like a soccer scarf that just kind of drapes over both shoulders.
That's what it looked like, yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's one of the deleted scenes, the one where they explain what the hell, what's the deal? Why is everybody so excited about her academic prowess?
So we then meet her boyfriend, Cameron. What a white guy name. Played it, as if Cameron wasn't white enough. The dude's name is Dylan Arnold. That is the whitest name I have ever heard this side of Conor McGregor. And then we have who was not Jonah Hill? Who was that guy? Was it Oscar?
Yes, that's Oscar. I thought he looked like a young Josh Gad. It's been a while since I've thrown a Josh Gad reference.
I was about to say I think this is the first Gad reference in the entire Haddonfield Nights saga.
I'm glad we threw that one in.
I'm proud of you for being so restrained and also saving it for such a Weasley character.
Are you telling me that you think that Oscar is more Weasley than Cameron?
Oh no, Cameron's just like a little bitch. Oscar, as we'll find out a little bit later, he's smart enough to know when to capitalize, but he knows what his true intentions are. I mean, to be fair, they're in high school. Shit's a lot different then. High school is not real life. So Cameron, just being a really hot white dude exploring his options isn't particularly wrong, especially for a city like Haddonfield. I think he's pretty much living up to what his expectations are. And did you catch who his father is?
Cameron's father?
Yes.
Do we even see him?
Okay. Well, we don't, but we find out who his father is. So it's not like fucking Tom Selleck plays his dad or something.
Okay.
They mention several times who his father is, and in terms of Halloween canon, it's a big one.
I didn't. Who is he?
So they mention several times, and specifically Toby Huss talks about his dad, Lonnie Elam. He's like, oh, he's an idiot. Lonnie Elam is Cameron's dad, but Lonnie Elam he was Tommy Doyle's friend in the original, and he's also, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
Oh my god. Wow. Loomis would be so proud that Lonnie survived long enough to have a kid.
Douchebag kid that Donald Pleasance would probably tell to hit the fucking bricks too. So we see the teens, we meet the adults, we understand the cast of characters we're dealing with, and we get a shot of Laurie Strode back at her place, knowing that we're dealing with a new Laurie Strode. She's shooting a bunch of fucking mannequins. And then we get the shot of her in the green wife beater tank top. Like, is this supposed to be Sarah Connor? I mean, this is...
It's trying so hard.
We covered not too long ago, what was the really shitty one that came out most recently? Dark Fate?
Yes.
There's literally a sequence of shots in that movie just like this with Jamie Lee Curtis with the tank top, loading guns, cleaning guns. It was reaching.
But it's trying so hard to do what H2O did a lot more successfully. With H2O, it's almost effortless, right? When we met Laurie Strode in H2O, you could tell that there was that trauma just weighing on her. But we didn't need to see her turn into just this really ultra-violent, jaded character to understand it. We saw instead a woman that was trying to kind of cling to normality, and the trauma was just kind of inside, and every now and then it would break out, right? That's a lot more interesting because it's more subtle and it's more like real life, as opposed to seeing a Laurie Strode that's just suddenly an action superstar that has a whole arsenal in her home, has a bat cave. It's so over the top. That's the tone of the entire movie. It's just so overwrought. And I guess they kind of had to do it because, like I said, H2O already got there and did it the subtle way. So the only way that they could go, if they were going to try to explore how the events of Halloween have affected Laurie Strode, is to just push it even further. Unfortunately, it's a lot less interesting. I mean, I know there's an audience for it. I think that there are people that were just dying to see Laurie Strode just, pumping a shotgun and just being another Sarah Connor or another Ripley even. But that's not, I mean, to me, that kind of transforms the character of Laurie Strode too much. It just takes her too far from what she originally was.
So Laurie goes to see the transport of Michael Myers. He's going to be taken to a maximum security facility in Colorado. He will be gone out of her life forever, and she's watching this, basically him be transported into this bus. She's behind the wheel of her car. She's got a gun ready to go if necessary. Lets out a really primal scream. We go back to the celebratory dinner at the Haddonfield Applebee's as the latest scholastic achievement of Allison is being on full display. This is also where her parents meet Cameron for the first time. She asks, and I have this in quotations of, "Did you ask grandmother to come?" And that is absolutely such a touch of an over-entitled little young person thinking they need to say grandmother. I don't know why it rubbed me the wrong way, but I've met enough young people that think they understand how the world works to realize how pretentious they want to be by saying something like that. So it definitely made me laugh.
Yeah, and on one end, I was going to try to defend it and say, well, Laurie Strode, the way that Jamie Lee Curtis is playing her now, doesn't strike me as the kind of grandma that would go for grandma or granny or nana or anything. But if nothing, I think that she would just ask to be called Laurie. So she should have said, "Did you ask Laurie to come?"
She does show up, and she's obviously a frazzled mess, and just leads to dramatic fall apart between the family at, to be fair, I keep saying Applebee's. It could be a TGI Fridays. Didn't particularly look like a Chili's. The architecture wasn't as such.
Bennigan's,
but it was
maybe?
definitely... I think Bennigan's was out of the game in 2018. So
this is a different timeline, though. This is a timeline where Haddonfield is a booming metropolis. So maybe they managed to rescue the last Bennigan's on Earth.
It was in the Midwest, so it could have been a Max and Irma's for all of my Midwesterners out there. And it leads basically nowhere well. And we get the flashback and kind of the exposition of Judy Greer explaining her childhood and, being trained to fight, being trained to shoot guns, and being taken away from Laurie Strode at 12 years old for basically inclement conditions.
For learning how to fight. So you can't teach your daughter to defend herself against serial killers. That's not America. No wonder Laurie Strode is voting for Trump.
Wouldn't you know it? The bus crashes that Michael Myers is on. and unleashes himself and a whole slew of inmates onto the freeway, or not even a freeway, it's like a backcountry road. And still, every time I see this scene, it's the most shocking because it's a dad and his son that pull up that find the scene after an evening of hunting. And the dad gets out to investigate it, and of course, immediately you pretty much understand that his fate has been met. And then the kid gets out. The kid calls the cops and is like, hey, there's been an accident. He gets out to go find his dad. He, in the process, accidentally shoots the not Loomis,
which is awesome.
Dr. Sartan, yeah, because he goes, don't shoot, and the kid shoots him. He's like, oh, shit. So he runs back to the car. But again, this is like dark shit. We've talked about the implication in the past of Michael killing dogs and the idea of him, obviously 4 and 5, the whole idea of it is he's trying to kill Jamie Lloyd, this little girl. And with Halloween 6, the idea of him maybe trying to sacrifice a baby. It never actually happens because the filmmakers have enough fucking decency to spare us that. We watch Michael strangle and bludgeon and beat this kid's head against the side of the car, and then he breaks his neck. It's horrifying.
Yeah, it's too much, and at the same time, it's like, well, we kind of were already there after Season of the Witch. Season of the Witch made a kid's head melt and turn into reptiles.
But again, we already established Cochran was a far more evil gentleman than Michael Myers.
Yeah, that's why it works. It's just all in the way that you shoot it and the way that you set it up. We did not need to see this happen. If David Gordon Green had the taste to look away, it's like, all right, you're gonna kill the kid so that we see that Michael Myers means business. Okay, well, you don't have to like leave the camera rolling while it happens. It's like, we get it. There's enough is enough. You have to show some sort of a restraint sometimes. You don't have to go all out. But then again, that's how the movie operates. Halloween 2018 is all about that shot of Laurie Strode, just her primal scream, right? Her howling because she can't bring herself to I don't know, break into the hospital and kill Michael earlier. That's the pitch of the entire movie. So of course we're not gonna look away from child murder. We're just gonna see it there in a close-up. It's just it's too much. Like so many things in this movie, it's too much. Now going back a little bit to the beginning of the scene, this is maybe the first time that I felt Danny McBride behind the word processor, just like writing and saying. And here they riff about the kid wanting to dance instead of wanting to go hunting or something. They have like 2 or 3 minutes of banter, just the dad and the kid, where the dad's like, well, don't you want to go hunt with me? And the kid goes on and on about how he's missing dance practice and that it really hits him in the heart when he misses it. Now, it's a lot of just inconsequential bullshit that feels like when Danny McBride just starts riffing in one of his comedies. It's not good. If you were attracted to this movie because you heard that Danny McBride was one of the writers, then, well, this is for you. That sequence and a few others that are to come, that's probably what you were hoping for. But for me, it just didn't work. It just felt so mannered compared to most of the movie.
It's fair. He had to get his spots in where he could. He had to, perk up and say, oh, wait, this is a moment where I get to write the dialogue. All right. Insert that gif of Kermit just going to town on the fucking typewriter. What this all leads itself to is us being introduced to the Sheriff Brackett for a new era, which is played by Will Patton. Very accomplished, very polished actor.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I watch this movie, I'm always kind of surprised to see him.
Well, the way that
the
way that they show him, it's pretty. He gets a major reveal, like visually, right? Because he's playing on the pinball machine, and we're just seeing his back, and then the camera pulls back as he turns, and it's all I was missing was actor Will Patton.
So to be fair, I say Sheriff Brackett. He is not the sheriff in this movie. He is Deputy Frank Hawkins, and he was someone who reported the scene initially 40 years ago, so he has a very close tie to it. For the movie, yes, he is the Sheriff Brackett character. He's the law enforcement figure we're most closely associated with. The Sheriff of Haddonfield is actually played by Omar Dorsey.
The Man in Black.
My God, I didn't even make the comparison or the tie there. That's insane.
I remember thinking about it the first time because the first time I watched this, we already watched 5. And now having watched 6, it was like, yeah. How else do you explain that aesthetic? He looks like nobody else in that movie with the hat and
everything.
He's even black, as if you because the movie has to hit you over the head with it.
No subtlety. Yes, he is one of the 4 African Americans that inhabit Haddonfield, Illinois. As we've seen during this entire journey, it's quite with a capital W, the city. And I assume I don't assume, what happens when we do that, but I would venture to guess he may have gotten this role from his work with both David Gordon Green and Kenny Powers from Eastbound and Down. He had a reoccurring role in the final season of that show where he was very funny. And for me personally, just the way the movie hit me when it first came out, he will always be, I believe his character's name is Lawrence in Road Trip. He's the guy that pranks DJ Qualls and makes him think he's going to kill him. And that shit's really funny, man, when you're 14 years old.
I don't remember.
So, yeah.
I remember Tom Green. That's all I remember.
That's Tom Green's best role. I don't know why we haven't done that movie yet, here nor there, but that is the best use of energy anyone ever got from Tom Green was in that movie. That is what Todd Phillips should have been nominated for an Academy Award for, was that instead of fucking Joker. Years before that movie came in and soiled the good name of the Oscars, back in Haddonfield, we had Will Patton as Deputy Frank Hawkins. Again, just to recap, was there originally 40 years ago. He could have made sure that Michael Myers was killed. He was the one that stopped Loomis from finishing the job, and he's held it against himself. So he knows what he has to do in this particular situation. We get the title screen of October 31st, which I completely forgot that there's a smash cut to a black screen, and then the white font fades in that says October 31st. And it leads to a grave visit for the investigative journalists. The podcasts go and they visit Judith Meyer's grave. And this fucking pretentious windbag is just, the grounds person there. This woman is trying to explain to him, yeah, this is where it's at. And this asshole just cuts her off. He's like, oh, I know. Stabbed a million times. Severed her spinal column. Sounds like a real fucking asshole.
Well, they're recording, right? At some point, they pull out their recorders and they start recording their...
And she looks at him like, what the fuck are these people doing?
Yeah, because it's not like they're not interviewing anybody. You don't need to do this. It's the same as pulling the mask in front of Michael. I mean, it's just theatrics. The shit that he's saying, that's stuff that you would record in a studio for sound quality. You don't need to record it in a graveyard that's probably windy and the sound quality is not going to be good. But they have to go for the melodramatic, like everything else in this movie. That's how you know that Danny McBride, David Gordon Green, they really don't know anything about podcasting. They just thought that, well, it's just a magic word, and it can justify them being indie journalists. It's not exactly the same thing, man.
So here is where this becomes everyone's fault but Michael. Michael is not hunting these people. They present themselves to him. Michael just went to hang out by his sister's gravestone, and then he sees these ignorant British journalists show up and is like, wait a minute. I forgot about that dude, but that motherfucker has my mask. So I'm going to go follow him now and get my mask back. If these people had just gone home, they wouldn't have ended up dead. And that's the whole thing we'll get into with Lori. He's not hunting her. She just happens to get in his way. So really, Michael is the victim here.
He just wanted to kill in peace. He did not have a vendetta. He was just, if you happen to cross him, he'll kill you. But you could stay out of his way and be okay.
And kill he does as he follows the journalist. I mean, we get 2 packed homages here to the previous films. One, Michael driving, which I know, Julio, you were just gaga about. And secondly, do you understand the homage here of where he actually finds the journalist and what unfolds? Did you get which movie this was paying tribute to?
Well, it's a 2-punch. Because on one end, is it H2O? Yeah, it's H2O, right? The one that has like the mom and the daughter. And he doesn't kill them, but he walks in. But it's also Joe Grizzly in Rob Zombie's Halloween. This franchise cannot stay away from bathrooms, from public restrooms around convenience stores or gas stations. So unfortunately, neither of these journalists, these British podcasters, can put up a fight the way Joe Grizzly did, and neither of them is as lucky as that woman and her daughter. So they get killed.
And also, though it wasn't covered on Haddonfield Nights, but it had been previously covered, this is a direct homage to Halloween 4, where he kills the mechanic and steals his jumpsuit.
Oh, right, because you see it... what's his name? Aaron, the male podcaster.
He finds the mechanic killed. It doesn't have the awesome shot of 4 where Michael's got his head bandaged up and it looks like a massive Q-tip, and he just has like a big rod. He's like, But we get that, and it's Michael. The killing starts unfolding. He knocks a dude's teeth out. Yeah, both of these journalists are just no fucking match. Joe Grizzly, LL Cool J, Josh Hartnett, they are not. I'm trying to think of anyone else we've covered that's put up a significant
Michelle
fight.
Williams.
Paul Rudd.
Michelle Williams got a
Michelle
couple of licks.
Williams. Paul Rudd. Marianne Hagen. Donald Pleasance. They have nothing on them. So they're taken out, and this leads to our Deputy Frank Hawkins as well as Sheriff Barker realizing the severity of the situation and, well, maybe we should take this a bit more seriously. The main significance of this scene is that Michael gets his mask back. This shit is in broad daylight at a fucking 7-Eleven. Does no one see what's going on? He just takes it out of the trunk and puts it over his... I think the car is still at the gas pump. It's not like he drove down the road a little ways and pulled over to do his ceremony.
Well,
it's
to be
ridiculous.
Fair, he already killed, I think, everybody else that was at the gas station.
Touche.
And it is Halloween.
It's Halloween. It's a good point. But I would still think the guy, that's working maintenance on the Slurpee machine would be like, man, that guy's not going to be able to see very well driving with that thing on.
Do you need some help, sir?
Back at Lori's house, she's got Tucker Carlson on. He announces the news that the bus crashed and that Michael Myers has escaped. So she stocks up. She starts readying all the ammunition, knives, guns, fucking Molotov cocktails, anything she can use. She basically, it's the weapons cheat from GTA 3 when you punch it in and you're just given everything. That's what she has here. She goes and sees the Wiz and Judy Greer. They're not having any of it. Judy Greer straight up just says, "You're not well, and you're not welcome in this house until you are."
Yeah, that's a classic Loomis move, by the way, because Laurie breaks into their home. She could have, if Judy Greer had been as well trained as Jamie Lee Curtis wants her to be, Judy Greer probably would have shot her. But instead,
yeah,
Jamie Lee Curtis just sneaks up on her. She's like, "Boom, you're dead." Come on.
She does it, but she's not even like half as charming as Loomis, where, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to startle you there. There's a killer after you, you see? But yeah, they're having none of it. Just get out. She tries to give him a gun, and they refuse to take it. Night has fallen in Haddonfield. Trick-or-treating begins. Michael on the town again. Did you have any type of nostalgia here, where we get like the throwback to the kids bumping into him?
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's happened at least in 2 movies I can think of, right? It happens in the original Halloween, where Tommy Doyle bumps into Michael, and then it happened in Curse of Michael Myers, where the new kid, was Danny, bumps into Paul Rudd. It's the passing of the torch when it comes to bumps. Here, it just felt artificial. It's like, this whole sequence, this entire movie is just made up of references to the franchise. So of course, they had the moment where he bumps into someone, into a little kid on Halloween. And then he just kind of goes on and kills a bunch of random people that we don't care about. Like, at least when Kill the Podcasters, we're like, all right, well, we've seen him in a few scenes. We have feelings about them. We have an opinion. They're kind of douchey. But at least when they die, it affects me. If I see him kill a random woman that I just saw for the first time, as he broke into her home, it doesn't hit you as hard.
Yeah, they do the first kill in Halloween 2 here. You do this little spot of the kids running into him, and it's like, oh, and then you kind of get warm and nostalgic and fuzzy, and then it just cuts to, it doesn't even cut, I should say. It becomes... You realize, David Gordon Green has watched a Darren Aronofsky movie, because then it becomes the long panning shot behind Michael as he walks and picks up a hammer, and then, like I said, it essentially replicates the kill that opens up Halloween 2, and then keeps going and walking, and long panning shots just for him to kill people that really, we talked about, didn't even get in his way.
I mean, he just decided to take that walk, and they happened to be there.
He decided to break into these homes, and they were there. And how dare them?
He saw a hammer that he liked, so he went to the hammer. Then he saw a knife that he liked. He went to the knife. On his path, there happened to be a woman, so he killed her. Then he saw a window he liked, so he went to that window. There was a woman in front of the window, so he killed her. That's just how Michael Myers operates. There's no big plan. There's no explanation beyond that, which is that probably the biggest thing that this movie does. It took us 11 movies to eventually go back to the starting point. We started this franchise with John Carpenter's Halloween, saying, listen, there's no explanation. He just kills. That's just what happens. And then we come all the way around 11 movies later to a movie that basically says, look, we've tried to explain it, and no, forget about that. In the end, we just don't know. It just happens. He just kills. Stop trying to make sense of it. It's pretty deflating.
It's essentially just like a really morbid Fortnite. He just finds things to forage and build upon, and those being humans that he can kill and weapons he can use to do it. We go to two kind of paralleling stories here. It's the Halloween dance at the local high school where Allison is with her boyfriend Cameron. They are in Bonnie and Clyde regalia, but of course with a modern spin on it. The boy is the girl and the girl is the boy. And running alongside that is Vicky, who is one of Allison's friends, and Dave, two of the characters we met a little bit earlier on in the movie. She is babysitting a young man and has her boyfriend over. The boy here, who Julian is his name, is fucking hilarious. He's one of the legitimate comedic reliefs of the movie. Maybe 10, 11, somewhere in there.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, he's the stereotypical sassy black kid. So I think that's why it's hard to pinpoint his age, because he sounds older than he probably is.
Like a 50-year-old man, he's just clipping his toenails in the background, which I have just unmitigated respect for. Whatever the case, doom is pending over all of these storylines. Obviously, we've been with the franchise this long, so we know the hot blonde with her boyfriend coming over while she's babysitting, they're probably going to get it first. Back at the high school dance, Cameron makes a total ass of himself, just completely makes out with this chick in front of his girlfriend.
Yeah, this is where he became, second only to John Strode, I think. Second most hateable character in the franchise. Not because he made out with the girl. That's like you said, he's a teenager. He's like exploring his options. I don't know how serious that relationship was, but the way that he reacts to being found out is just, one, denying it in a very stupid way, because he knows that he's been caught. But then he takes Jamie Lee Curtis's granddaughter's phone and dumps it in the. It wasn't punch. I don't know, but it was like, it's a bowl.
Pudding.
Pudding. There you go. That to me was just a pretty. It wasn't even that. It was childish. It was childish and it was petty. It was childish in its pettiness, because he had the nerve to act like the injured party in this whole scenario. It's like you
made himself the victim.
Yeah, you get caught making out with someone that's not your girlfriend, and then you have the nerve to act like you're offended. So yeah, I could not wait for that guy to die, and then the fucking movie did not deliver.
I was gonna say, you mentioned John Strode, and at least he got massive comeuppance.
Yep.
This fucking asshole didn't meet his maker at all. He probably slept at home that night and woke up the next day and was like, that sucks.
He went back into the party and just kept making out with that other girl.
To be fair, she was pretty hot, but that's here nor there. Very disappointing. And in my research, in no version of the movie that was written or filmed did he have any type of like grisly death scene. Whereas again, Halloween 6 at least got right. John Strode is a horrible person and gets the most brutal death of anyone in that movie.
Yeah, depending on the cut, sometimes more brutal than others.
Back at the house, Vicky is babysitting. Michael wanders in. It was just on the beaten path that he happened to take, and unfortunately, it means that Vicky and her boyfriend Dave have met their ultimate end. Fortunately, Julian escapes. He ends up fleeing the house and getting out of there relatively unscathed.
Yeah, he goes and hangs out with Cameron, the Survivors Club.
This is where we get the interstitial shot of the trick-or-treaters, 3 kids dressed in the silver shamrock masks. We have the skeleton, the jack-o'-lantern, and the witch. One of my favorite shots in this movie. What this all leads to is it becomes obviously an active crime scene. The whole stretch of that whole block is just taped off.
Trail of bodies.
Laurie shows up, meets Dr. Sartain for the first time, has the great line of, "You're the new Loomis." This is where Laurie and Deputy Hawkins come face to face. She explains, "I've prayed every night that he would escape so I could kill him." And he tells her, well, that was a stupid thing to pray for.
But Laurie's walking up and down the streets with her gun out. She almost shoots the deputy when they first run into each other. It's
She does.
Yeah.
She understands. She just follows the trail of screams. She understands that Michael's loose, and she is just haphazardly shooting into homes when she thinks she sees him.
She's
one thing I did forget is she finds him walking through the yard and actually tags him. I forgot she completely shoots him.
Yep.
She shoots him in the shoulder, and there's a squib that goes off, so you know it made impact.
Yeah, but she's no Loomis, so she doesn't empty her entire gun.
And don't even say Loomis, because Donald Pleasance is the only one. Like, Malcolm McDowell was kind of a bitch for all the compliments we gave him. He was just like, "Stop, Michael," and he would shoot him once and then give him time to recover. Fucking Donald Pleasance unloads a clip in a motherfucker, and he keeps pulling the trigger too after it's all been emptied. But it becomes now the manhunt is on. They're gonna find this motherfucker and make him fry. Judy Greer is her worst ideas and worst thoughts and worst possibilities from her childhood are all coming to life in front of her. And at this point in the movie, she still is kind of in a state of denial. She can't realize this is happening. They're trying to get in touch with Allison. Obviously, her phone is in a vat of pudding, so that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Grandma Laurie does leave the message on her phone and make sure to give the message, "Do as I say." A phrase that Jamie Lee Curtis has made famous throughout this franchise.
It's this franchise's "Come with me if you want to live."
There you go. That's a good one. Nail on the head. Back with Allison, though. Not Jonah Hill. What's his name? Oscar. Oscar is trying to walk her home, and I think he realizes this is his moment. Being a chubby, guy in high school whose coping mechanism is comedy. Ask me how I know these things. And he tries to make a move, and she's like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
He should have been the podcaster.
Smoothie does not play it. It's been like maybe 15 minutes. He just tries to swoop in and make a move here. You got to give that shit like a day, maybe two. Take him out to Dairy Queen, get some steak fingers. Be like, "Hey, yeah, he's a real asshole." But instead, just drunk, and the prop cans they had here made it look like they were drinking Shiner. I don't know why I caught that, but the beer that was like cascading out of his pockets looked like Shiner Bock. Unfortunately for Oscar, he's coming to the same path as the Shape, as Michael is in this backyard, and we get, in my opinion, the most creative scene in the movie with the motion sensor lights, where Oscar is drunk and not really understanding what's going on. Motion sensor lights will go off, and then Michael will be in a different position of the yard, prone to strike.
Yeah, it's a shame that he has the mask on, because really every time the lights came on, he was making a different face. You can't tell because of the mask.
This was like his SNL audition that he sent in, where every shot he was doing a different character. Unfortunately, he just had the mask on, so you never know it. Oscar goes to escape. He's screaming fucking bloody murder, screaming for help, any semblance of sanity. He gets stabbed in the back, and Allison thinks he's fucking around. And that, again, when I was in high school, I fainted during a choir concert, and I fell back on a girl, two girls behind me. And because I was such a practical joker and, the funny guy, the fat funny guy, they thought I was kidding. So they both let go of me, and I fell, and I hit my head really hard on the floor. So I could relate to Oscar in this particular situation. There's this story about this boy that cries wolf and has some laughs, and I don't really know how it ended. But for Oscar here, he screams out for help, and she comes back thinking he's fucking around. And dude's not face, his jaw is impaled on this fence. It's fucking terrifying. And then, I'm sorry, I understand we're in Contrarians Corner here, but the score that John Carpenter kicks in right here, God, I can just see John Carpenter standing up, at the computer where he's putting all his music together. He's got these massive sunglasses on, and like a fucking bandana tied frontwards like Tupac style, rocking the fuck out to this. This score here is god tier shit.
He rolls his sleeves first. He stands up, rolls his sleeves, and then goes to town.
He presses the space bar because that, continues what you're playing. And then Deborah Hill's just like, crank it up.
Louder. Faster.
Michael's on the hunt. The Shape hunts, as the title here used would indicate. Allison runs, finds assistance at least, not unlike her grandmother eventually finding help in the original. We don't have the awesome scene, though, from the original where Laurie... It's like, help! And that person comes to the window and looks at her and then turns their front porch light off. I wish we could have had some sort of homage to that with Allison. She's rescued by, whoever, Jane Smith and Haddonfield. Cops come and pick her up. They get her over to Lori and Karen, which head to Lori's fallout shelter. And this is where I have here, Lori is fucking insane because she has her monologue here about how Michael's waited for this night. He's come for me and I've been waiting for him. And it's like, no, not really. I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know who you are right now. As was indicated by when he just walked right by you and you shot him and he didn't really react to it at all.
Allison, she gets picked up by the deputy and the doctor, right? And were they supposed
Correct.
to be
She is not
to...
back with yeah, they were going to take her to be with her mother. But you're exactly right. She gets picked up by the deputy and the doctor, and during this is when they come across Michael.
This was frustrating. I had forgotten that this happened. Not the switcheroo, but just basically Will Patton's untimely fate. I had forgotten about it.
Undignified death.
Yes. It's like
yeah,
you gave him.
Laurie has that.
You gave him that introduction to let him go like this.
Laurie has that monologue before the scene that we're speaking about because my next note says movie derails. In that Will Patton runs over Michael. They find him just walking, by the local baseball field or some shit, and runs over him. And the doctor runs out because he says like, "Don't kill him," in a really terrible Loomis impression.
Yep.
And Patton still says, I'm going to blow his fucking brains out, get out of the way. And then for no fucking reason, Dr. Sartan, I guess is taken over by the spirit of Michael, and he stabs Will Patton in the throat and kills him. And then he puts on the mask for some fucking reason. Loads Michael in the car. He's unconscious, but sitting next to Allison, and this fucker thinks he's going to stage some reunion, like it's some reality TV show that he's going to get some massive ratings for.
Did you notice when he was, because he puts a mask on, then he takes it off because obviously he realizes that it's really hard to move around with that.
I can't drive wearing this fucking thing.
But do you notice when he took the mask off, on the back of his neck, you could see the thorn tattoo?
Are you being serious? No. Oh, okay.
But you said,
damn it, dude. I was like, what the fuck?
I wish they had. There's in the sea of references that this movie throws at you, the two big missed opportunities were a reference to the thorn, which you could have done here. The doctor goes crazy. Why? Oh, because he has the sign of the thorn or whatever. And two, when Michael was on his rampage, walking through every single house in Haddonfield, there were a lot of like TVs that were on. I wish there'd been a TV that was playing Season of the Witch in this Halloween. Just throw it out there.
Yeah.
Just see Tom Atkins' face screaming. That would have been great.
God, that would have justified this complete bullshit side plot of the movie with the doctor. If Sartain had looked at Will Patton and said, "It's your game now, doctor," yes, that would have been fantastic. You got me like unreasonably hyped there. I thought like I was going to have to go back and rewatch this scene after we finished recording. When this movie first came out, Julio and I reviewed it in the Real Talk portion of whatever movie we discussed that week. And I was reminded of that during this because one of the things we really harped on that was fucking awful was right after this scene here with the doctor killing Will Patton, we go to these two bumpkin cops talking about sandwiches. And have we come across anything in the Halloween franchise that is as tonally displacing as this is?
Well, so number one, it's written by Danny McBride, part 2, right? This is it. They're just riffing. And then I think I even said it on that previous conversation we had about this Halloween a couple of years ago, that I thought that maybe it was a homage to the bumbling cops from 5. But the thing is, even in 5 is such a mess that the cops are not out of place. They're just of a piece with the rest of the movie. Here, it's a Saturday Night Live skit just to bring Saturday Night Live up again. It's like they needed a scene where the cops were just bullshitting, so they just gave him a conversation about sandwiches. It has nothing to do with anything else in the movie.
I would have much preferred they just brought back a Tina type character for one scene instead. Like, here's this dumb bimbo that is just here for no reason. No, instead, we get the cops talking about fucking sandwiches and
brownies.
The whole point of it is it's just a waste of time, but they see the cop car, the doctor's now driving up the road, and the doctor's pulled over, accosting Allison about using her to help Michael speak. Michael wakes up, wouldn't you know it? This doctor's been studying him for fucking X amount of years, and he doesn't understand that this guy's going to just kill you if he gets the chance. So what does he do? He breaks out the plexiglass in the cop car. He gets out. Fortunately for Allison, she's able to skedaddle, but the doctor, gets thrown down. Michael stands over him. This moron, say something. What did he think was going to happen?
What did he think
Michael stomps his fucking head in.
I know I keep making this joke, but he should have just gone, "Hey, boo," then the stomp.
Or Hail Hydra or something. No, you know what it should have been? Is the fucking sardine, the doctor says, say something. And Michael goes, "No, I don't think I will." He stomps his head in, and it's the theatrical cut of part 6 where fucking John Strode's head explodes. That's basically this. James Courtney, the guy who played Michael Myers in this movie, essentially just stomps down in a bag of Concord grapes and fucking oil, and it just shoots out everywhere. This doctor got what he fucking deserved. And I will say, for that stupid subplot derailing the movie, at least it was redeemed in him getting one of the most brutal deaths possible. So good on you, Kenny Powers.
Yeah, if not Cameron, at least fake Loomis.
Back at the home, Lori and Karen have a mother-daughter moment. To put it mildly, the weight of the situation is finally hitting her, and she understands that maybe my mom wasn't really that crazy. Maybe she took it a bit too far, but this shit is real. And Lori explains, I'm sorry for not being a good mother to you, but I raised you for this situation if it ever happened. Sadly, Toby Huss, who had massively outkicked his coverage with a companion in life, falls into the trap of investigating the noise and seeing what's going on. He sees the cop car outside and he goes out to check on it. And this concludes the segment of the movie that is absolutely offensive to me as a Halloween fan. There's been maybe 5 minutes of real time that have elapsed since Michael was confronted by these police officers, and he had time to create like this artistic, this nativity scene in this cop car where he hollows out one of their heads and puts it on a flashlight. And then the whiz dies, and I would be much more upset if it wasn't because of some ridiculous fucking arts and craft project that Michael had.
But that's this movie, right? It will sacrifice logic and efficiency, I guess, for the sake of throwing some sort of a reference to previous movies in the franchise. In this case, of course, it's a Halloween movie, so you have to have Michael Myers have at least one gory display in one of his kills. So this time it was the 2 cops.
What this does, in essence, though, is it sets the stage for one of the reviews that Julio had read in the first portion. We Are Women, Hear Us Roar. This is where the movie becomes the Strode gals against Michael Myers. I'm fine with the Wiz perishing to advance gender equality. There will be sacrifices that are necessary. In this case, it's one of them. Michael, again, he's not specifically hunting Lori, but she definitely thinks he is. Does the classic arm through the window. Is trying to grab a hold of her. She shoots fucking half of his hand off with a shotgun. It's so metal. You can't help but audibly emote to this happening. Just like, yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, so she's been preparing for this for 40 years. And the first thing she does, knowing that he's out there, is stand by the door that has those glass panes with her back. It's just like she's inviting him to break in and almost kill her.
Yeah, she like puts her ear to the door, like, "Who's out there?" Oh, Jesus.
Come on, Laurie.
After all that preparation, all that Fox News she watched, and that was,
She went out without her mask. That's all it took.
I was about to say months and months of grocery shopping without a mask, and this is hoisted by her own petard in this situation. Michael gets his hand shot off. Laurie goes down to the basement, explains, this is what we're going to do. So Judy Greer is strapped up, ready to go. Laurie at this point knows that Michael's made his way into the house, so she starts going room by room, one by one. Each one of them has a gate that'll drop down. Unfortunately, she eventually comes across Toby Huss. He is a little bit worse for wear in the sense that he is dead. Michael appears from the shadows and begins to attack Laurie, throws her off the second-story balcony at her home, goes to survey the damage, looks over, sees her motionless. At this point, Allison, who had just been foraging through the woods, makes it back to the home and comes in. Mom, Grandma, help. So Michael knows there's fresh meat there, so he cocks his head, turns back around, looks down. We get the iconic recreation of the original film where Laurie's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Difference being, in the original, like, there was an imprint of where Michael's body was, and there was a trail of blood. Laurie just, like, gets up and scampers away like the Cloverfield monster and is just nowhere to be found.
Yeah, the moment that you start giving Laurie Strode the same sort of supernatural abilities as Michael Myers, then, well, now you're making a superhero movie, right? The whole appeal is that it's this unstoppable evil force versus a regular person. Even if you decide, okay, well, it's going to be a regular person that has a shitload of guns, it should still be somebody who, if she falls out of the window, that's it for her for a good while, right? But Laurie kind of just... She's a female Michael now, and instead of a knife, she has a gun. But
she's Michelle.
Yes, Michelle Strode. Yeah, she. I mean, this entire movie has made her less and less interesting as it went along. So of course, why stop?
Judy Greer rescues her daughter, brings her down in the fallout shelter that's below like a kitchen island. We had one like that in my parents' house in Kyle. That's kind of what I thought of when I saw it. I always wondered if maybe there was a fallout shelter underneath it. But then I remembered you can't really have those in Texas. The soil doesn't support it. So I was bummed we didn't see like her food supply. We saw like her weapons cache. But I'm curious if she had like fucking...
Tuna cans?
Well, not tuna, but like things that she bought immediately after that are clearly expired. Ninja Turtles, Chef Boyardee type things. Or like... promotional items for movies that are way too old. She has like Adventures of Ford Fairlane popcorn buckets and
Curse of Michael Myers thermos.
That would have been the real one if she had like Season of the Witch candy, like Season of the Witch. I'm trying to think of something they would have made to cross promote at that point in time. Whatever the case. So Judy Greer gets her daughter down and they're in the fallout shelter. They're as quiet as a mouse, not a peep in the house. Michael, though, is not an idiot. I mean, he knows how to drive after all. So he realizes, oh, this massive cabinet that's in the way might be covering up something. The architecture of this kitchen doesn't make particular sense. So let's get this out of the way and see what happens. Through enough finessing, he's able to tip it over, rip it off. And this is where we get Judy Greer's Oscar clip, where she has the gun and she begins crying and screaming and calling for her mother, saying, I can't do it, I'm sorry. And as soon as Michael comes into focus, she says, gotcha, and shoots him right in the fucking collarbone. And we get one of like his, like when male actors first start in porn and don't know how much they're supposed to emote at climax, you just get this kind of like, and that's what we get from Michael right here. And then this just becomes this fantasy slasher movie where it cuts to like the moonlight hitting Jamie Lee's face at just the right time. And she says, Happy Halloween, Michael, right?
Yep. It's the ending of Death Proof. The Tarantino.
Yes.
It's just three women beating up Michael Myers, who falls for it time and again. It turns out that this was a very far-fetched plan on Jamie Lee Curtis's side, because apparently...
Well, to be fair, she had 40 years to plan it.
Right, but there has to have been an easier way of dispose of Michael Myers than lure him into the basement and then trap him there so that you could burn him alive, right? It's like when you have a gazillion guns in the basement, why would you trap him in the basement? Now he has access to all those guns. If he wasn't so dumb, he could have just like shot them once he was down there.
The fucking end of Independence Day, Jeff Goldblum just assuming that the aliens are going to have the same software we have. It's just like, we'll just assume this fucking insane person who hasn't spoken for 40 years will know to rip this off, and then I'll be hiding back here and make sure the light hits me just right, and then I can stab him. She's essentially relying on a Rube Goldberg test that she's formulated for 40 years to work out.
Right. Part of the plan was also
But again,
the Wiz dying. It all had to fit together.
That's where it started to unravel. But again, you got to blame the dumbass doctor. The movie tries to celebrate the ingenuity here of the Strode gals. Michael didn't want to be there. Like he could have been anywhere else. He didn't really want to stalk Lori or the granddaughter or anything. They just happened to be in the way. But if that doctor hadn't brought him out there, this would have never happened. They essentially just trapped a feral dog and were like, ha ha ha, gotcha, you dumbass.
Yeah. There's the two things that kind of, well, the one thing that really bothers me, and the other one that's just like, the thing that really bothers me, and I also might have brought it up before, is that for somebody who's as obsessed with making sure that Michael is dead, Lori is pretty quick to just kind of walk away, right? If it was me, I would have made sure, after the fire's done, I would have gone looking for the body. And then once I find the burned corpse, I would just cut the head off and bury the head somewhere else. But no, she's happy with just assuming that Michael's not going to escape that fire. And then they just kind of hitchhike out of there. To me, it seemed to betray this obsession that she'd had through the entire movie. Then the other thing is that, like you said, so this is just a big celebration of woman power, which is great, except that it comes at the expense of making every single male character in the movie an idiot, Michael Myers included. There's not a single male character I can think of that has any sort of redeeming quality, right? They all either die stupidly.
Julian.
Who's Julian? Oh, the little kid? I guess,
yeah.
Kind of, maybe. Okay, so what the movie's saying is that if you're young enough, you're not, you haven't been corrupted yet. You haven't developed the stupidity that the rest of the male species develops once they become young adults.
It's true.
But yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see, I think you can make a movie about woman power, about strong female characters standing up to the threats heading their way, the threats that have terrorized them for years, for decades, without suddenly turning everybody else around them into idiots. I think that diminishes actually the power of the message. It doesn't work for me when you have that final moment. It's a fucking freeze frame too at the very end. There was no challenge, really. I wish that somebody had actually made a decent case against the way that Laurie Strode was dealing with her obsession. And that it would be a much more interesting movie if you get to this ending and you're like, yeah, okay, so she won, but at what price? But instead, it's the movie saying, yeah, she won, and you know what? In the end, it was all worth it. Yeah, she lost her kid, but Judy Greer knew when to shoot. To me, it's just not. It loses its way thematically in that final act.
So yeah, they run out to the street and like a literal recreation of. There's a Simpsons episode where Homer's hitchhiking in the country, and this farmer pulls up, and Homer has to sit in the flatbed because the guy's pig is riding up front with him. And this says, I'm afraid old Zeke sits up front with me. And he just makes all three girls get in the flatbed, which I guess this may have tried to been an homage to fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the fact that they all just jump in the flatbed, but I don't fucking know.
Where's the shot?
And then we get
the shot of Michael just swinging his mask.
And then we get the shot of the interior of the basement. Michael's gone. All the flames are roaring and Michael's no longer there. There is the freeze frame on the knife, which I guess some people interpret it as like the evil had been passed on. But then if you watch the credits, at the end of the credits, you start to hear the breathing. So Michael lived. Michael will return in Halloween, the Infinity Soldier. So
And then at the very end, In Love in Memory of Mustafa, Vaya con Dios.
Yes, produced by Malik Akkad.
I saw.
And obviously a movie that would not have been made without Mustafa Akkad, so a fitting conclusion to it. And a fitting conclusion to Haddonfield Nights in many ways. And I think this is going to yield some interesting discussion in the real talk portion of this podcast, as I think there are many feelings all around, good and bad.
All sorts of feelings.
Julio, are we ready to move this along?
Yes, let's go to real talk.
Okay. Stay back. Mom! Help us! I can't do it! I'm sorry, I can't do it! Gotcha. Happy Halloween, Michael.
Hello, friends of the Contrarians. For the final installment of Haddonfield Nights, friend of the podcast Chris Lemchi offers his thoughts on the 2018 Halloween, the direct sequel to the original. I actually went to an opening night screening of this film with Chris. Both had a great time, and it's a good memory I hold dear. It's one I was able to reflect upon during Haddonfield Nights. Be sure to check out Chris's podcast, What's My Line, on Podbean, and follow him on Twitter at @TheChrisLemchi, TheChrisLemchi. Now let's get to Chris's thoughts on David Gordon Green's contribution to the Halloween franchise, and following, we'll get back to the Contrarians for some real talk.
All right, Contrarians, Chris Lemchi here, and I'm here to give you my thoughts on the film Halloween. And no, I'm not talking about the original film in 1978, also called Halloween. I'm talking about its sequel. And no, not talking about the Halloween 2 movie that came out in 1981. I am talking about the Halloween sequel that came out in 2018, which ignores the continuity of Halloween 2, Halloween H2O, Halloween Resurrection, and all the other Halloweens. So no longer is Michael Myers Laurie Strode's brother. Well, obviously the cult and the Sam Hain and Paul Rudd stuff was already deleted from continuity. But those films didn't happen. Obviously the Rob Zombie films didn't happen, especially that Rob Zombie H2, which is awful. I am here to talk to you guys about Halloween 2018, with Jamie Lee Curtis coming back as the role of Laurie Strode. And like I said, it just immediately takes place after the original. So the original happens, Michael Myers escapes, or I guess somewhere in the night. Like, I guess he got captured, because it fast forwards to 40 years and he is in some kind of asylum and he's locked up. And obviously, you know how the story goes. He'll eventually gets out. And this movie is building to this confrontation between Michael and Laurie Strode. And I like what they do with here, because like I mentioned, they're no longer brother and sister, so there's no motivation for Michael to go after her. And that's kind of the thing I like the most, because Michael's not like Freddy or Jason, who have motives for their killings. There's a reason why he's called a Shape. He just does it. That's what's terrifying about him. He just one day woke up from his trance and just went out and just went crazy. That's terrifying. You don't need to have like a reason to do it. Which is, again, growing up, I always thought, since again it came out in 1981, I was born in 1988, so my entire life the story was they were brother and sister. So it was kind of weird for me to kind of like remove that from my head. But again, this movie, they definitely go out of the way to tell you that they're not related, and this movie does a good job of just bringing bringing back Michael as his force again. Like, he's not even going after Laurie Strode. It's just he just happens to kind of get in her way. She thinks that he's going to come after her, but in reality, he's just this force in Haddonfield. And he just happens to kind of come across Laurie Strode again. There's one point in the film where it kind of loses me because there's a doctor character, and he kind of goes a little bit off the rails, and it's almost enough for me to just kind of walk out. But they quickly just kind of turn the boat and say, "All right, you thought we were going to go here, but kind of steer clear of that." So it's a weird scene, but they don't really go too much into it. It kind of just serves you to get to a certain point, and it pretty much just leads to the climax of the film. And I love what they did when Laurie confronts Michael again, because as you remember from that first movie, Laurie is just this like timid, scared high school girl who's in the film she's scared to like ask like Ben Tramer out on a date, whereas this Laurie is this hardened like PTSD. She suffered this massive trauma when she was 17, and you can tell it shows, and it's kind of affected her life. It's affected her family because now she has a daughter and a granddaughter. You can see the effects of that night on them, and you can see how Jamie Lee Curtis does this great job of portraying Laurie as this victim, this not necessarily a victim, but this hardened soldier. She's kind of similar to, I wouldn't say just like, but she's similar to Sarah Connor in a sense. Like I would give her like Sarah Connor in T2, where she's just preparing for this night that may never come. Because even like her daughter, which is played by the fantastic and underrated Judy Greer, is always telling her like, it's not happening, you're going crazy, Michael's locked up. But still, Laurie keeps preparing. She said she's Sarah Connor. She's preparing for the day. So when they finally do meet up, it's just this great cheering for Laurie, because this is what she's been waiting for her entire life, for 40 years, confronting her abuser. And it pains me that we're not getting Halloween Kills this year, because we were supposed to get it this month in October, and then COVID happened, so it got pushed back to next year. And then they're going to do a third movie called Halloween Ends right after that. So it sucks that we're not getting Halloween Kills, but I am willing to wait until next year, hopefully. Knock on some wood that they don't get pushed back again. But I am willing to wait because I like what they do with the story. I believe the director was David Gordon Green. I like what the direction he's taking with it. I don't want to say Michael became silly, but like when you watch like Halloween 6 and then also Halloween Resurrection, and then the Rob Zombie films do him a complete disservice. Michael Myers kind of loses that like fear in those later sequels. So this film was able to kind of bring that back. You kind of feel like, he's not just Michael again. He's back to being the Shape. Granted, I guess you could have ended it with this film, but they left it open. And Jamie Lee Curtis was great. Judy Greer was great. And bring on more Halloween. Since you guys are listening to Contrarians, just remember, they're right and you're wrong. And also, thank you guys for calling me a Green Lantern. I hope to one day fulfill that promise for you guys. And just for a little Green Lantern tease here, in brightest day, in darkest night, I hope you guys enjoyed my insight. Happy Halloween.
All right, I am recording for Real Talk for the Halloween.
We already made the joke in the first portion, but we have reached our conclusion, at least for now. The most recent one I watched was the Blob, the Steve McQueen movie that said the end, and then put the question mark. The end? And that's kind of where we are here. Now, with this movie, we will have covered every Halloween movie with the exception of 2 and Resurrection.
Yep.
That is, out of 11 movies, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, and I've watched 2, like we said, I haven't seen Resurrection. That's the only one I haven't seen. I'll get around to it one time or another. I'm sure eventually I'll see it streaming for free again, and I'll jump on it. But based on everything you've told me, I don't know that I want to pay to watch it. So,
you do not. I was about to say there are literally thousands of movies that you should watch before that.
But wait, but you own it, right? Because I think you said that you own every Halloween now.
No.
Oh.
No, I own every Halloween that I want to own. I own every Halloween except for Resurrection and the second Rob Zombie one. No, the thing was when we prepped for this, because I didn't own H2O, I had to look harder to find a copy of just H2O, because all the readily available ones were combos with Resurrection. And I didn't want to own that. It's just kind of like, I understand that's extremely pretentious and nerdy, but it's for the same reason that like my Terminator collection cuts off at 3. I don't need to own anything after that.
That's okay. I own the other ones. So, together we have a full set.
With our powers combined.
You can, you can co-own Salvation. I'll allow it.
Blessed. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess that leads me to the question: which version, which format? How did you watch this movie?
God damn, you are using my trope now because I forgot to do it in the first half. God bless you. I own the Blu-ray, the initial Blu-ray that was released. I think they made a steelbook through Best Buy, which I was jealous of because that came out shortly after. But I've just got the regular ass Universal release. So is this streaming anywhere? How did you come across it?
Prime Video. I got it off Prime, and this time I watched it on my laptop. Mainly, I just kind of wanted to stay out of the way of in the living room, let my wife enjoy her time after work in the living room. And I just went to my room with my laptop. I've seen this movie before. I watched it in theaters, so it was okay. I didn't feel like, oh, well, I owe it to the movie to watch it in the biggest screen I have available. It's like, I've seen it before, so I can watch it just in my pretty decent laptop screen, and it was fine. Obviously, I missed a couple things. The reference to the kids from Season of the Witch, but that's probably more to do with me taking notes as opposed to me not seeing things properly on the screen.
I would argue there are maybe 3 or 4 Halloween movies before this that I would be like, oh man, you got to watch it on a big screen. Oh, you got to watch it, I think obviously the original, that just visually speaking, 4, specifically just for the opening sequence of that movie, deserves to be viewed on the big TV. And then there's some really interesting cinematic choices in the Rob Zombie one that I think this movie retains all of its impact regardless of the screen size that you watch it on. So not going to castigate you for that one.
Well, good. We're off to a good start.
Halloween 2018, released on October 19th of 2018. I would have been in the theater on the 18th because that's how we do things now. We say a movie is released on a day, but then we do just normal screenings of it the day before. I was there with a friend of the podcast, Reed, and also a friend of our podcast, Chris Lemchi. I do not remember what the last movie before this was that I was excited for. Maybe The Dark Knight. There's probably something in between. Maybe Dark Knight Rises.
I was going to say Dark Knight Rises.
I was full mast for that. I think The Master came after Dark Knight Rises. I'm trying to put my dates together. Spring Breakers, I think, probably would have been the movie that I was the previous most excited about. So, all that is to say, good God, I remember watching the trailer for this movie and like my heart was racing when it was over. And that's not something we joke a lot, but with what Julio and I have done, and you've been in it longer than I have, Julio, spending over 40, sometimes up to 60 or 70 hours a week around movies and seeing trailers and just being around that constantly, it is incredibly easy to become jaded by it.
Right.
So for people like myself and Julio, when like a trailer gets the blood pumping or some primal reaction from us, this isn't me saying, we're harder to woo. It's just basically that's the cards we've been dealt with, the career choices we made at some point. But when I saw this trailer, like I remember I was sitting at my computer and like my hands were shaking and I was just like, oh my fucking God, when he puts the mask on. And we'll go through the quotes and everything, and we'll get to this movie itself and what it means overall. But my hype level for this movie was pretty much unlike anything that has occurred in my legitimate adulthood, which has probably been from like 28 on. It took me a long time to grow up and realize, how to properly harness excitement and things. For this, it was just absolutely out of control. Whether or not it lived up to everything, and whether or not that has stayed, that is something we will discuss here shortly. But in that moment, I was so ready for this movie. Now, this is a movie that is 79%, right on the edge of 80 there. It's still viewed as fresh, but that means obviously there were some naysayers about it. Based on the quotes you had chosen for the first portion, Julio, I'm curious to see what negative ones you pulled. So, what were the detractors saying? More Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, where is the real Loomis? All right, so I got a few rotten quotes, starting with Stephen Prokopi from Third Coast Review, who says, "I somehow sat through the entirety of director David Gordon Green's Halloween and was never scared. How is that possible?" Were you scared, Alex? Whether the movie worked in other aspects or not, did this movie scare you at any point? It was when the doctor put the mask, you were scared that
that is absolutely not when that was. Oh, it was the trailer. When he drops the teeth on the floor. I felt that was kind of one of those scenes that I understand that's not exclusive to this movie. That's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles now. You got to give a lot of the shit away in the trailer. Mm-hmm. But that particular scene, I remember really fucking freaking me out. And then wondering how we got there. I was like, oh man, how do we get there? And then in the movie, you find out you don't really even see what happens. He just beats the fuck out of this dude, rips his teeth out of his face.
Lovely.
The kid dying. I remember that really jostling me watching it in the theater because you don't expect that.
Yeah, I think that we should probably make the distinction though between being disturbed and being scared, because
okay,
I'm with you. Like the scene with the kid is pretty disturbing, but I don't know that I was ever afraid. Of course, maybe I was afraid the first time I watched it, because I remember watching it here. I knew that the kid was done. I knew that he was going to die. And maybe the first time when I didn't know, I was afraid for him, but I don't remember. All right. Willow McClay from Curtsies and Hand Grenades says, Halloween is merely a shortcut for the same boring, strong female lead characterizations we've been seeing for the better part of 20 years now.
I want to punch this guy in the face.
He also doesn't like Aliens or any of the movies in the Alien franchise.
Yep.
He hates Sarah Connor, and just in general, seems to have a serious problem with, I guess,
women
not being victims. Come on, Willow. You know what? The worst part is I can't tell, because Willow could go either way. It could be a woman that hates strong female lead characterizations, or it could be a man. I don't know.
That's true.
Oh, well, Stephen Garrett from Book and Film Globe says, this new Halloween is really more a fetish object than a horror film. Fetish object is in... What are you fetishizing? Carpenter's original? I can see that maybe. Or even the franchise in general. And finally, this was funnier before you stole the joke in Contrarians Corner, but... Matt Brunson from Film Frenzy says, well, I guess this is what happens when a valuable franchise is entrusted to the guys who foisted your highness upon an unsuspecting world. Unavoidable.
Well, yes, what had to be expected. I was thinking they were going to take a pot shot at Eastbound and Down, but anyone that's ever watched that show really understands that it's actually very well written. David Gordon Green, director, written by Jeff Fradley, Danny McBride, and the aforementioned David Gordon Green. Budget of around $15 million for a box office return of over $250 million. It brought home the bacon in many aspects. I guess I don't really know where to begin with this one, Julio. It's
well, I have a starting point.
Built up so much for this moment.
I have a starting point, because one of the constants of Haddonfield Nights and just our overall conversations about Halloween and the franchise and Michael Myers has been maybe our biggest point of contention, right? Where you like your Michael Myers impenetrable, unreadable. We don't know why this is happening. We just know that he exists and he inflicts pain. And, well, the best thing you can do is get the fuck out of his way, which is what this movie does, basically, right? This movie, one of the main things it does is just do away with all the backstory, all the mythology that was built up over the sequels, and just almost start from scratch. And I am on the other camp where I find more interesting the idea of what's going on with Michael Myers. What makes him tick? Why is he doing this? I don't need a dissertation about his motives, and I don't need I certainly do not need a secret cult controlling his actions and tattoos and constellations and all that. But I find it the moment when the narrative grabs me the most across this franchise is when there is a character that's trying to figure out what's going on, whether they reach an answer or not. Because I think that's when it elevates beyond just being a slasher movie, and it can become a more of an examination of evil. And I understand that the point that you make is that, well, maybe what the franchise is saying, directly or indirectly, is that there is no explanation for evil sometimes, and sometimes evil is just evil. But I never feel like the movies themselves say that. I think that's just kind of a place that we arrive at by default, and I think that I would like it more if we reach that conclusion in the movie. One of the quotes that I didn't pick said something about how it was a positive quote about how this movie, with the character of Laurie 40 years later, what she's saying is stop trying to figure him out and just kill him or stay out of his way. And which is funny because that kind of came up in Contrarians Corner. And in a way, I guess that's where Loomis started in the first Halloween. So I don't necessarily feel it. I can see how you can read it that way. But I guess all this interest just... Are you satisfied with this depiction of Michael Myers? And do you think that the sacrifice of getting rid of all the stuff that was built up in the sequels, do you think that the trade-off is worth it, right? If you go with discontinuity, then there's no more Loomis, at least not in this universe. There's no... I guess there will be a Tommy Doyle in the next movie from what we've learned, but at least so far, there's no Tommy Doyle. There's they're not related. The whole relation between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode is a throwaway joke in this one. Are you satisfied with that trade-off? Because I know you like the sequels.
I like some of them.
Yeah.
I always think of, when thinking about horror movie sequels, think of I can't remember which Friday the 13th it was going to be, but there was at one point in time, might have been like 6 or 7 in that franchise, there was this idea that they were going to bring back all of the survivors from the first 5 movies, like the individual people that survived, and they were going to come together to defeat Jason finally, which I always thought that's like such a fucking cool idea. And I think when you're dealing with an industry like the slasher franchise, that playing to your fans is probably going to be more complimentary to you than playing to just a broader audience. Mm-hmm. The problem is Friday the 13th never had a movie as good as Halloween. The original Halloween. Nightmare on Elm Street never had a movie as good as the original Halloween. And then they did that weird thing where they tried to turn Texas Chainsaw Massacre into a slasher franchise, which it's really not. But, that's where the difficulty kicks in. And if you want to, yes, you can continue on this weird road trip of this character, Michael Myers, and coming up with all this different wacky shit. And then he ends up, on an internet show, and he's this member of this cult, or he's this thing being used by this cult, this entity, this weapon being used by. At the end of the day, you're coming from one of the greater movies, at least of a genre. Obviously, I view it as one of the greater movies ever, but something that changed the game, and I think eventually someone's going to want to pay respect to that, and that's what happened here. And part of that is, to do that, you have to just go to the well, or from where it originated. Not even there was no well there. You have to go back to the ground where it began. I know that this wasn't exclusive to David Gordon Green or Danny McBride, this idea. I know when this movie was in development, because it was 9 years between the second Rob Zombie one and this. I know somewhere along the way, the idea and the production company that was going to finance it, the idea was this is going to be a direct sequel to the original. So that was something that was being toyed around with for a while. I love Halloween 4 so much that, my idea, some crazy amalgamation of it all, would be bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis, but still having Danielle Harris and the idea of the Jamie character the way 4 left off, not 5 when she's a mute and all that.
Okay.
But the problem with that is then you begin ostracizing a certain amount of your audience and creating separation, because Halloween 4, as much money as it made, is not commonly understood movie like the original Halloween is. I get it. It's a movie that came out 40 years later, and the quickest way to attract the biggest audiences possible is to just pick up and create a story almost as simple as where it originated. The highest compliment I can give this movie personally is my dad watched it and he was like, "Yeah, it was pretty good." And my dad hates horror movies. He thinks they're stupid, and he doesn't understand, in his words, I waste my time watching the Friday the 13th movies and things like that. And the Halloween sequels. He watched Halloween 4 with me one time. He's like, "This is so dumb." And obviously it can't be understated. The level of acting in this movie is, if we're going to define this as a slasher movie, this may be the highest pedigree of acting a slasher movie has ever been given. So
Dude,
that's not some...
Donald Pleasence is rolling in his grave.
Okay, hold on. Big Don knows I got love for him. And as we talked about in his performances, he is clearly the best part of what he's in. What we've watched with him, though, is with a bunch of raw talent.
Yeah.
This movie, man, we gave him some guff, but Toby Huss, just in his small part, phenomenal. Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously great. Judy Greer, putting that aside, just because I have so much high praise to give her. I guess you could say Bilgener, the gentleman who played Sartain, Dr. Sartain, is a bit over the top, but Will Patton's awesome for what little they give him. I joked a lot about the guy who played Oscar, but the teenagers are pretty good.
Yeah.
There's not any stunted, really sub-porn level acting that became the norm in the 2000 slashers, the Final Destination movies and things of that nature. I really think the Oscar guy was... I think the way he was written was probably what I was kind of rolling my eyes at. The guy who played Dave kind of seemed annoying, but again, it's good news if we're saying one performance was questionable in a slasher movie. I think, to answer your question in a really roundabout way, this was in a lot of ways the best we could have hoped for. In 2018, trying to make sense of all of that other shit and still trying to make a commercially accessible movie would have been near impossible. And I think it also creates a situation where real fans of the franchise get to still have all that. And it hasn't necessarily been, bastardized or damaged. This just created another timeline. And, Halloween now has, 4 or 5 different timelines that exist. And me personally, as someone who loves Halloween 4, and I would have liked to have seen Danielle Harris showing up, but at the same time, that didn't happen. This did, and that's great, and I still get to hold 4 close to me, and I don't have to say, God, they fucking killed it. It's we've talked about, both on our podcast and off, when X-Men 3 came out.
Oh, God.
It was one of those things. I'm trying to make an example here of, they killed something I was very excited about. If they had just tried to do something different, then cool. Or if they had just been all right, we're just going to start a new story. This is going to be a new thing. But you always had X-Men 2 or the way it ended with the Phoenix and, oh, I've got this to cling to. It's the Logan thing. Man, there was a couple of Wolverine movies that really fucking sucked, but they stuck the landing pretty well.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is not the end of Halloween, and I do have issues with it, but I can't stress enough the people involved with what came from it, and I use the expression quite often, the cards they were dealt. How do you think this could have been better?
I have an idea, but that's not, this is all just after the fact, so it's a lot easier to come up with different things that they could have done after you've watched the movie. If I hadn't seen this movie and you told me, what would you do with a Halloween movie in 2018? Well, for one, I would have said that you're asking the wrong person. You need to ask somebody like Alex Mattis. This is good. I like number 4 as well. And I think that streamlining of the mythology is not a bad thing. I think that you could have gone sort of in the reboot direction, which they kind of are. They're already rewriting history anyway, right? But would you have been opposed to them recasting Loomis instead of basically just killing him off in the 40 years that happened between the original Halloween and this version? Because what if you had this, if this Halloween movie wasn't just about Laurie dealing with the trauma, but also about Loomis, a really fucking old Loomis, dealing with it maybe in a different way, and you could contrast that, or even...
Yeah, I would have no issue with the idea of keeping Loomis somehow in the fray, because the fucking Sartain character is the worst part of this movie. The idea of I don't know what. I know the original opening for this movie was going to be they were going to basically rewrite the ending of the original one, that Michael killed Loomis on that night in 78.
Aww.
Which, yeah, it was too expensive. It was two things. One, John Carpenter, who was, a producer on it, was like, no, you're not going to kill Loomis. And then two, it was going to be too expensive because who was it in Rogue One? Was it Peter Cushing? Mm-hmm. They did the de-aging on. They were trying to find a way they could do that with Loomis. They're like, no, we've given y'all enough money. We're not going to do this for this movie.
Just CGI Donald Pleasence all over.
But yes, to your point, for all this movie tries to do to stay true to the original, coming up with this new character was dumb. So yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I agree with you. Keeping Loomis somehow part of it would have helped.
Yeah, because I think that ultimately that's the big sort of regret, or the big thing that I miss, the big casualty for me when you just erase everything that happened in all the sequels, is that suddenly a character that was so big, so central to the franchise as Dr. Loomis, now it's kind of a footnote. I don't know, that bums me out a little. It certainly bums me out more now than it did the first time. The first time, I guess I hadn't really watched as many of the movies, and I hadn't really appreciated the trajectory of his character and all that. I don't know, that, even the Rob Zombie movies had a Dr. Loomis. So it just feels a little weird that all we get from him here is just some weird audio clips and just passing references. I don't know, maybe that would have been a way to go. But to me, really, that's a very personal thing. What I like about the movie is also what ends up kind of undoing it for me, because and it's something that happens with horror movies a lot for me, which just shows, well, it's not my genre. So, of course, I am attracted to things that are not what define the genre. So in this case, to me, much like in H2O, the central idea of Laurie Strode just being fucked up by what happened in the original Halloween and having to deal with that, and seeing her processing it and how it affects the people around her, to me, that's really cool. That's the real meat of it. And this movie does it so much better than H2O. H2O, Jamie Lee Curtis was great, but she was surrounded by a bunch of uninteresting characters.
And she didn't seem, and we discussed that when we recorded that episode. It was, I think she had the best of intentions, but the situations around that movie kind of demotivated her performance, whereas here you can tell she's she's in it 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more intense, and that's cool. I like it. It's in Contrarians Corner, I was kind of making fun of it for being too over the top. No, I mean, it's fine. I don't mind it. I can buy it either way. I can buy a Laurie Strode that's well adjusted on the surface and has like the inner turmoil underneath, just waiting to break out. And I can buy this Laurie Strode that doesn't care about even pretending that she's well adjusted, and she's just full on, just wearing her trauma on her sleeve, so to speak. So that stuff is really cool. But because of the nature, like the kind of movie that it is, and the kind of movie that I guess it's expected to be, you have like the detours into things that I'm not really that interested about. So, yeah, the teenagers are not bad. I mean, the performances are good, and considering like where we've gone in other entries in this franchise, this is all fine. But I still don't find it very interesting. Like all the stuff about the Halloween party and the Allison's romantic life, it's nowhere near as bad as Josh Hartnett and his buddies in H2O, but it's still kind of like I have zero interest in what's going on with these kids when you have characters much more interesting like Jamie Lee Curtis and Judy Greer, and the deputy that was there that night. I want to know more about those people. I want to follow those people, and every time that the story stops so they can go check on Allison and her friends, it's like this I've seen before. It's better acted and staged than average, but the whole sequence with Vicky and Dave and the kid, it's like it's fine, but I want less of that, and I want more of just the adult characters, but the ones that have really like shit going on, instead of just the ones that are fodder for Michael Myers.
There are scenes in this that work very, very well your first viewing, and not upon repeats. I still think it's a fine film, but yeah, I understand what you're saying too. I can't speak for you because obviously you didn't go into watching this the first time with as much like emotional anticipation as I did, but rewatching it, especially tonight, through the lens that we do these things analytically, thinking to myself of exactly what you're saying. Like, holy shit, this stuff with Laurie is so fucking dark. She like lost her kid because she like was obsessed with this idea, and it just fucked her life up so bad that seeing really just paint by numbers babysitters getting killed. It's like, no. Let's go back to the other shit here. This is a little bit more interesting. I was going to ask though, you're talking about, your interest waning when it would cut to Allison at the school dance. Would you have preferred Wendy Kaplan partying at the Tower Farm in Halloween 5 with the Opie and Anthony cops there?
No. Like I said, I understand this is still above the average for the franchise and for the genre. It's like, it's just one of those things where I've only managed to halfway come to terms with the fact that when I'm watching this kind of movie, if I'm watching a slasher movie, if I'm watching a horror movie, there are some things that are just going to happen, and it's a lot easier if I just don't resist them. We're going to have stupid characters doing stupid things so that we can have a body count. There will be, I was surprised, I'd forgotten that there wasn't an actual sex scene in this movie. I actually found it really funny that the closest we come is Vicky telling Dave that she's going to dry hump him or dry fuck him. That tickled me. I was like, oh, okay, well, I haven't seen that before. And I'm not saying that I needed a sex scene or that I don't need it. It's like either way works, but it's just one of those things that, because of the way that your average slasher movie structure, it's like, okay, well, you're going to have dumb teenagers having sex and being unaware, and then they get killed. That's the kind of stuff that's like, why rage against this specific machine? Right, in my place, it's like I can keep complaining about these things happening, but really the logical response is like, well, what did you expect? This is slasher, and instead just be pleasantly surprised when they play against the tropes.
Yeah.
But even if I were to not complain about the more familiar slasher elements in this movie, I think that what really bums me out, other than Loomis not being a major player, is that when you get to the end, it just feels like it's all spectacle and not enough like all that meat that we had earlier in the story, I just don't really see much resolution, right? It just feels like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's satisfying to see Laurie Strode kicking his ass, like the entire Strode family just beating him at his own game, so to speak, and the gotcha moment is great, and the way that Laurie had set up her house is ingenious, but then it's just like, I don't know, it doesn't leave me feeling like it fulfilled the promise of what it was setting up at the beginning. Like I kind of said it in Contrarians Corner, and I was half joking, but it was like I wish that there was more of a challenge to our protagonist's point of view, instead of the third act just being sort of a celebration of her trauma. And that's cool. And you know what? In the end, I'm just like, I'm a dude that's, watching it from like, a dude's point of view. And I think that this is probably, maybe even clearly, like something that can hit you a lot harder if you're a woman and you don't see enough, you have your Ripleys and you have your Sarah Connors and whatever, but to get to see Laurie Strode make that jump, maybe that's
dealing with all the past trauma.
Exactly. That has a thrill that maybe, well, it's just not connecting to me because I'm just not as connected to the character in that way. But, in the end, like, I just wish there's an intellectual part of me that wanted more than just the thrill of seeing Laurie Strode and her daughter and her granddaughter beating Michael. And even if you were to have this ending, but you had her at some point maybe even doubt herself, if you had some character that would have an argument with her and very clearly not being the wrong, like the closest you come is maybe Judy Greer being bitter about her childhood, but that doesn't necessarily it's like, what are you saying at the end, right? When this happens, are you saying that it was worth it, or are you saying that in the process of it's like, oh, she won, she eliminated Michael, but what are we left with? It's, I don't know. The ending doesn't really work for me in an intellectual way, I guess, and that also keeps me from really, really falling for this movie, because I could forgive it a lot of the missteps if it really closed, more strongly. But I just get bogged down by the little things like Laurie standing against the door, making herself an easy target, or
that was hilarious. I'd never thought about that before. That your play-by-play, that really made me fucking laugh. My argument would be, because there's 40 years of anticipation, because she's gone through this scenario so many times, I think it's fitting that the ending is so remarkably unremarkable. So I think there could be something to that. I think probably the answer is somewhere in between you and I, both of our thinking. My question is to you, when we go into the closing sequence here, and did you enjoy the homages to the original, specifically like her, getting thrown off the deck and then disappearing in the
yeah,
I mean, maybe it did something for you because we've been doing all this in buckshot approach, but did you enjoy any of that?
Actually, that was one of the things that I even caught the first time when I watched it. I remember getting it. I was like, that's like in the first one, and I thought it was cute. I liked it, but
the theater I saw it in erupted in cheers when that happened. So that's like a really cool memory I have of that one scene. It wasn't like obnoxious, like clapping, like it was a theater full of sold out theaters. People like, yeah, like it was great.
Yeah, that's cool. It's one of the things that also I don't think it makes much sense, but I can roll with it because it's such good. I guess it's such a good reference. There were other things that I caught this time. Just little things. Hang on, because I didn't get to bring them up when we were in Contrarians Corner.
Julio over here, before we started recording, he's like, yeah, I found 11 homages to the previous movies. Didn't fucking catch the kids in the silver shamrock masks.
You know what I caught though? That the deputy calls when he's referencing the massacre from the first movie, he calls it the babysitter murders, which you told me was the original title, or one of the planned titles for Halloween.
If it didn't fuck up the audio levels, I would be clapping for you right now. God bless.
And then the fact that in that same conversation, the the sheriff, the man in black, says, well, what are we going to do? Cancel Halloween? Which I thought was funny because basically, according to Curse of Michael Myers, they canceled Halloween in Haddonfield for several years. So I thought that was funny. And then on a more completely not serious note, I couldn't find a way to work it in, but I was going to say that when you first see the Miramax logo at the very beginning of the movie, before the opening credits even begin, the first thing you see is the Miramax logo, which is kind of made of stars. And I was going to say that it was referencing the constellation of Thorn. But
I was trying to figure out some way to work in like the podcasters when they were driving to Lori's house were listening to Barry Sims on the radio.
Oh.
But then we don't even know if Barry Sims exists or whatnot. You fucked my head up for like 30 seconds when you mentioned that Sartain had the fucking thorn tattoo. I was like, wait, what? You had me, man.
That's what Halloween Kills is going to be about the thorn cult.
See, that's the brilliance. We've had this in the fucking, what are we, 7 months in? Mm-hmm. The not being right next to each other recording, you and I have had the opportunity to work each other just a little bit with some things because we can't see each other's faces sometimes.
Yep.
So it's worked out positively. So we have we got to recap the franchise, and we could talk about this movie a lot. And I think for myself personally, it's good. As I jestingly said, over and over again on social media, and kind of, the soft stomach punches to people about the franchise, I would say, well, it's the best sequel we've got in 30 years. Ha 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 ha. And there's a lot of good to this. And there are some things I think the movie literally derails. And if you go back to whatever movie we covered, and then we did our discussion, our review of this movie initially back in 2018, we both said the same thing, in that the doctor side plot, the movie fucking derails, and it kind of betrays the intelligence of the movie up until that point.
Yeah.
That the doctor's so fucking dumb to just think, oh, I'll just let him roam free and he'll tell me where dry land is and everything will be fine. And then that whole scene with those dumbass cops, as you mentioned, the Danny McBride dialogue. And then when he kills them, he turns their body into a nativity scene. But if you took that like 20-minute parcel out, obviously the movie would be really short. But when they get back to Laurie's house, business picks up. And I still maintain they do a tremendous job of, at no point, if you're really paying attention to it, Michael is not stalking Laurie. She's just insane and thinking this guy's after her, and basically in a situation where it just presents it to where she's in the way the entire time, which I think is really interesting, and also good on them for making sure they establish that much.
I think it's, and honestly, I hadn't even thought about it until you brought it up, and I think that's pretty brilliant. But now I'm kind of wishing that they had leaned more into it. But of course, if you lean more into it, then you're exploring the Laurie Strode character in a way that I don't think they were interested in, because what are you saying if it turns out that yes, there was a threat, but the threat was not as personal as she thought it was, right? What does that say about her crusade, about her obsession? And that, I think that opens a door that the movie was not ready to open. It'll be fascinating if the next movie explores that.
I know John Carpenter has always said he really regrets introducing the idea of them being brother and sister in the second movie, but that obviously gave it an understanding as to why he was seeking her out. Whether it's good or bad is, well, obviously I've talked about the reason I fucking love the first one so much is just because there is no reason. But it gives some contextualization to the rest of the franchise. So the fact that they did away with it here, but made a point to never make it seem like he was going after her. I mean, the main compliment in, comparing this to the original is that, especially having watched both of these in really close time frames, in between some questionable to downright bad sequels, you can tell in this one that John Carpenter was overseeing everything in a vision that he saw, and that Jamie Lee Curtis was fully committed to it. And what we got yeah, there's some stuff in it that like, well, maybe, retool that, but it came the closest to capturing the feel of the original of any of the other 10 sequels, which obviously nothing's really, the immortal words of Eddie Guerrero, nothing's better than the original, Holmes, but it's pretty damn close. And before we go into what I want to consider the main event of this, obviously, if you have anything to add on to that, go for it. But I was about to say, the score in this is phenomenal, and John Carpenter coming back to create that. God, the music in this gets me so fucking pumped. It's ridiculous. And especially like the Halloween theme, you would think there's not that many ways to tinker with it, but when it just hits you in the beginning, like it goes right into it, and there's no build. It's
it's a pretty sharp cut because it's from the podcaster screaming, right? And then
say something.
Yeah, and then it just cuts on the music. Yeah, no, it's really awesome. The score is really effective, and really overall, yeah, something that, I mean, you kind of brought it up earlier. I don't think it's just that the cast is so uniformly talented. It's just that the movie feels modern. Modern makes it sound like more. It makes it sound superficial. Like the craft, it's very, sometimes watching the sequels, it felt like, well, we're making the movie, but we're only taking it this seriously, and this one feels like they took it 100% seriously, the way that the original was being taken seriously.
Yes.
If that makes any sense. Yeah, with all its missteps, I still always felt like, okay, well, this is serious business. And that's,
oh man,
that's something that I appreciated.
Literal chills. Like I'm nearly having goosebumps here just because you're finding a way to verbalize a thought that I've had about this that I couldn't figure out how to do so. So the other Halloween sequels, the movies we've covered, we'll exclude Rob Zombie because he thinks he's right. So it's. The sequels we've covered, the Halloween sequels, and the slasher movies that we have done on here, and especially the Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequels come to mind as those in this vein of, we're just gonna make a good Halloween movie. We're just gonna make a good Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. This was, we're gonna make a good movie. And it was, we're going to incorporate actual A-list stars into it and use a real budget and make a real fucking movie out of it. And that's what you said is exactly right. This feels so much more real deal than any other like horror movie in a long fucking time.
I think that we've found the perfect point of intersection between my take on the Halloween franchise and your take in the Halloween franchise.
God bless.
We both
it only
agree.
took 6 episodes.
We both agree that Halloween 2018 is the real deal, or takes itself seriously.
Coming to a close here, as far as this goes, like I said, the main event, as I keep teasing, and I mentioned earlier, I want to put off, comes perfectly off of what you said about the real deal and something taking itself seriously. Judy Greer in this movie is a fucking revelation. And, we always joke about Oscar clips and, should have been nominated for this and that. I really cannot be complimentary enough of her in this movie because she is a good actress. Mm-hmm. And, we've obviously with Elizabethtown, there's its fair share of jesting we've done on this podcast. What's that movie with Jason Segel I really like? Jeff Who Lives at Home. Mm-hmm. That's she's in that. That I always think of her in that because she's so fucking great in it. And the countless other projects I've seen her in, this is like I would almost consider the best I've seen her, and that's not. It should just be complimentary of how good she is in this. And Julio might be breaking ground here. And the reveal last year with Kinsey about Almost Famous being upgraded to my favorite, one of my top 5 favorite movies. My favorite scene in the entire Halloween franchise is Judy Greer in the basement while Michael's ripping up the island, the kitchen island, and it's something you can't teach. Like all these movies we've watched, and the actors and performances we've dealt with. It's just been thinking of like, well, and like in my mind, for example, like, you know, Julio could do that same thing. You know, it's just it's someone that's there and just kind of fills it.
Denominator.
I'm just making an example, or you know, I know people that could do this as good, if not better. I don't know someone that could do what Judy Greer did in the fucking 30 seconds the scene evolves in. Her whole range from scared to like bewilderment of, oh my God, this whole thing that my mom told me is actually real, to, oh my God, my daughter's here, I have to protect her, and then her calling out to her mom, and I can't do it, help us, please. And then when she sees Michael, and then just all comes together in that one moment, gotcha, and shoots him, boom. I don't know of like something I've had a reaction to like that in a horror movie ever. I was just like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. And you know, this is fuck. What's the George Clooney movie you and I screened together that she was in? Was that The Descendants?
Is she his wife? No, the wife is in a coma. But I mean, yeah, The Descendants we screened together, and that has George Clooney in it. I don't remember who she plays.
I remember her in that, and she's in Love and Other Drugs, and you know, she's been in movies with very substantially famous people and had some very good performances. And I think it just speaks to what you were saying of the seriousness that this movie was taken with. And man, I don't know. I might have completely just hijacked this segment, but I think she's the highlight of the movie by a country mile.
I agree. I don't know that she is the highlight. I think, well, she's a revelation because, see, to me, the highlight is seeing Jamie Lee Curtis playing Laurie this way, right? A way completely different than what we've seen before, maybe even different than what we expected. But I think that seeing Jamie Lee Curtis pull that off is not as surprising or as unusual as seeing, at least to me, seeing Judy Greer play this type of character, because I usually associate her with lighter roles. She's usually romantic comedies, or you know, where she's the funny supporting character in a drama, and so here she gets to be something completely different. She has a couple funny moments, but for the most part, she's just playing a character that's straight, and she's doing it really well. And then she gets, I agree, maybe the best moment in the movie. So, no, I'm 100% behind that. It's she's definitely maybe, if not the highlight, one of the highlights. And I love it. I love the fact that she doesn't die, which means that she'll be in the next one, hopefully.
She died on the way back to her home planet. They had to kill her off, and they'll have someone drastically older than her in a 5-year span get impaled on a wheat thrasher in the opening act of the movie.
I think the big revelation is going to be that Allison stabbed both Laurie and Judy Greer in the back of that truck.
You've seen the teaser for Halloween Kills, right?
No, I didn't know there was one.
Oh yeah, it came out last summer or this summer. I don't know what is time anymore. It plays off of your thing with Halloween 2. It literally is them in the back of the truck driving away from the flaming house, and the coming towards the house is cop cars and fire trucks, and they're like, "No, don't go." They're trying to, wave them off. It's fucking 20 seconds long, but it's, boom, Halloween Kills. And then this big sticker goes over that says COVID, and then it gets delayed for a year.
The sticker goes over Halloween, so it just says COVID Kills.
Metallica, sad but true. The way we structured this with following the chronology of it all, and I think that's a way to end it, but also just from where this franchise has come, where it's gone, and where it has ended up as of most recently, I think for the kind things we've been able to say about it, it's a perfect ending point. We've talked about this so long that I'm not even going to shoehorn in all my trivia. Other than Julio, who do you think it was that convinced Jamie Lee Curtis to do this movie?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, Arnold is a good dude, but it was not. It was, in fact, her godson, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Aww.
I thought that was just one of the... Because sometimes on IMDb you read things that are like, But the Taking Shape book it confirmed that David Gordon Green or someone had... Because Jamie Lee Curtis was like, fuck off, I don't want to do it. And someone told Jake Gyllenhaal, like, hey, we know you're close with her. Why don't you just see if she'll meet with us? And it was one of those things if she just thought it was going to be like H2O, like another cash grab, and then she actually read the script and she was like, oh, yes, I will absolutely do this. And John Carpenter had some great quote in that book about, like, I finally realized I had been bitching about the Halloween franchise for so long without actually doing anything that I thought I should actually probably do something. All right, for myself, for the 2018 Halloween, I'll give it a B. I think for the things we've discussed, the doctor subplot does literally derail a lot of that movie for me, but my God, there is so much good in it. So I'm gonna go. We'll say a B plus. How about that? Just for Judy Greer, we get that plus added on.
I checked my Letterboxd score from when I watched it the first time, and I gave it 3 stars. And my little blurb was pretty much like a summary of what we've been talking about, maybe less kind. So I'm definitely bumping it up to 3.5. I wish I could give it a 4. I can't bring myself to it. And I'm wondering if the best way to watch this movie is as a double feature where you watch the original Halloween and then you watch this one. And the contrast between young Jamie Lee Curtis and present day Jamie Lee Curtis, and, you know, the innocence and the jadedness of it. If that would help me make that final jump to where I am all in at the end. Instead of just being all in on Judy Greer's moment. That's a possibility. But for the time being, let's celebrate that it got bumped half a star on my rating from 3 to 3.5, with the potential to make it to 4 if I just keep putting myself through this.
I can dig it. And again, did not take it easy on you. There was a long and winding road between the original and this one to get here. Took you way off course with Halloween 3. And then we had Halloween 6 and brought you to Halloween H2O. The one other thing, the homage to the original, I did want to bring up that I lied. There was another piece of trivia. The scene where Allison is in class, the teacher that you never see, you just hear her voice. That was Riff Randall, PJ Souls, Linda from the original one. I think if I understood correctly, they wanted to try to bring like her to have an actual on-screen role, but then they were like, this just wouldn't make sense.
I thought you were going to say that scene references both the original Halloween because Allison looks out the window as she sees Jamie Lee Curtis the way that Jamie Lee Curtis saw Michael. But more importantly, it references H2O because you have that scene where Michelle Williams. Yeah. Is there, and well, in that scene, Michelle Williams is the one that expresses the theme of the movie, and here it's just the teacher, the one that's saying it while Allison is looking out. But still, I got the H2O vibes, so that's gotta count.
I don't think more importantly an H2O should ever really be mentioned in any type of film discussion. All right, so that is it for Haddonfield Nights. We have wrapped it up here, and is like kind of a retrospective or a conclusion, so to speak. I told Julio we'd go over a few quick awards. We're not going to do a whole Winoni's ceremony out of this, but just a few quick acknowledgments. So starting with favorite Michael, and I think obviously this will not be too surprising for me. I'm curious if, Julio, you've developed a Michael along the way that I was unaware of, but obviously Nick Castle from the original and parts of the 2018 version, just the walking, the mannerisms, and I think it's probably unfair to credit that specifically to Nick Castle because the story from the original has always been like maybe when he wasn't on set, John Carpenter or Deborah Hill or just someone had to get in the suit to kind of stand there and just take the shots and whatnot, but the original Michael for me is the best, mask and all. Julio, do you have anything different?
Can't do it.
Did you like
man.
Tyler Mane a lot?
No. Well, see, original Michael would never make the cut because he drives too much. It's original Halloween Michael is the worst when it comes to driving, and we've established how I feel about Michael Myers driving. No, I went with old Michael, with 2018 Michael. The Michael that has aged.
Okay.
I like the fact that we get glimpses of his face, and you can tell he's an old man. That's really, to me, that shows just how different we are, Alex. Because you obsess about the masks, and to me, like the coolest thing is when Michael's not wearing a mask.
You're like, holy shit! Look, he's got gray hair.
Yeah,
he's got a beard.
Yeah, he's got a beard that you can see. Like he's an old man. And that makes him, to me, that makes him creepier. Just the fact that he aged, and but he's horrible. He's still a killer. That's. I didn't want to separate from like the actors because I remember hearing that in this one, 2018, it's Nick Castle and what's the name of the other guy? But it's basically two people playing him at least, right?
Yeah, it's James Jude Courtney.
Yeah, there you go.
JJC. Secondly, and at this point, since we have covered all but 2 Halloweens on the Contrarians, this isn't just confined to the Haddonfield Nights series we've done, but our top 3 Halloween movies. And for myself, I think I pretty much already spelled this out, but we'll count down from 3 being 2018, 2 being The Return of Michael Myers Part 4 from 1988, and then, of course, the original being my favorite Halloween. Julio, if you had to pick 3, what would they be?
Here's where it's going to get ugly, Alex.
Uh-oh.
This is what you need to understand if you haven't over the last 6 episodes or 5 episodes in this one. And that is that what I want from the Halloween franchise is very different from what you want and from what most Halloween fans want. So, okay, so to me, number 3 is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
Nice.
I remember enjoying it. I mentioned it, I think, a couple episodes ago. What I find the most fascinating is that it's a movie that acknowledges its place in the franchise. It's people that have dealt with Michael Myers before, and they don't waste time kind of like relearning that he's a threat. They go into they green light everything. Let's take care of business. And then it becomes a slasher movie, and I lose interest.
To jump in, when you were explaining that on one of our last episodes, it took me a second to understand what you were meaning, but then that really stuck with me. For all the things I love about that movie, it's like you're right. It's not like the other ones we covered, like H2O. Oh, you're crazy, or every Nightmare on Elm Street or every Friday the 13th of like there is no Jason. In that movie, it's just like fucking hell. Get all your guns, get the National Guard. We're going hunting.
Exactly. So I love that, and so that to me makes it very memorable among all the other entries in the franchise. Number 2, brace yourself, Alex, because I actually have Halloween H2O as my number 2.
Oh my God.
Allow me to explain.
Please do.
Listen, I agree with every criticism you threw at it. I agree with it in the episode that we recorded. It's all the stuff with the young ones. It's a waste of time. I don't care about Josh Hartnett. I don't care about Michelle Williams. I don't care about the other 2. But I care a lot about Jamie Lee Curtis, and I think that's what I gave this movie 2 stars. When I think back, I was sitting back and I was trying to like rank them in my head and be like, okay, which one am I more likely to watch again, and which one would I have like fonder memories of? And the thing is, it's a short movie. The stuff that I don't like kind of like moves really fast anyway, and the stuff I do like it's good. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis is performing the hell out of what they give her. She's playing, similar notes to what she does in 2018, but also different enough. Like we're saying, she's keeping her pain a little closer and like tighter and not letting people see it. And it has the promise of a very interesting movie. And for all the missteps and all the bullshit in between that and the end, it's funny because I think that that ending, that final confrontation between her and Michael feels a little more, I find it a little more cathartic than the confrontation that she has in 2018. Maybe because it's just like one-on-one, or maybe because I think that just how fucking crazy she goes at the end, where she like takes the gun from the cop and steals the ambulance and just goes overkill trying to kill him. That's what I wanted from her in this movie in 2018. I wanted her to be that, like, you've established that she's already that deranged, and she needed to go and chop Michael's head off, as he was burning. So, there had to be a controversial opinion, and I'm jumping on that grenade. That's what I'm saying. H2O is my number 2. Sorry, Alex.
if there was some way to incorporate like the first half of Rob Zombies with the second half of H2O, I think that would just be like a wet dream for Julio. He would be like, "This is the perfect Halloween."
Look, I haven't. Rob Zombies is not my first, so my number one. So no.
It's not. Okay, that has me very interested then.
No, my number one is Halloween 2018 for all the things that we discussed in this episode. It basically it does what H2O was trying to do. It does it much better. It still doesn't quite, pull it off the way I would want to, but in the end, it's a much better execution of that idea. Oh, Laurie Strode is traumatized. She's, ruining her life, ruining the life of the people around her. And it takes it more seriously. It doesn't have fucking Josh Hartnett running around being a brat. It's so much better. So, as it stands right now, if anybody asks me, I would say that one's my favorite Halloween movie, and that's probably the one that I'm more likely to rewatch. So, there it is, my number one.
So along this path, my sister has watched pretty much all of them with me, former guest of our podcast, Lillian. And she is saying now 3 is her favorite Halloween.
Wow.
And it makes me just angry. I'm like, no, you can't say that. You can say you like Season of the Witch, but you can't say it's your favorite Halloween movie because Michael Myers isn't in it. It's one of those things like I feel like the fucking Anders character from Workaholics. I'm like, this isn't fair. You're not being fair. And but she fell in love with that movie, which I guess speaking of 3, that segues into the third and final discussion or category that we'll have here, and this is just moments from Haddonfield Nights. So obviously different than the movies. These are obviously exclusive to the Haddonfield Nights 6-part series, and scenes, moments, what have you, in the movies that we've covered so far. So Julio, do you have any? I only have one honorable mention. Do you have any honorable mentions?
I do. My one honorable mention is Dr. Loomis freaking out at the end of Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers.
Very fair. It's, as we joked about on there, it feels like that clip is not, it wasn't put in the movie like it was supposed to be, just because of the delay he has, where he looks around and, oh, now? Ah! So for myself, my honorable mention is there was no way I couldn't at least bring this up. The fucking Joe Grizzly. I mean, just the moment, the man, the scene. I don't want to call it therapeutic, but our discussion of that Rob Zombie Halloween brought me a lot of, I think, closure is a bit of a dramatic word, but it brought meaning to a lot of my feelings on that movie that I've never really been able to explain, because the people... my closest friends that are big fans of the Halloween franchise are Chris and Reed, and they both really do not care for that movie at all. So it's never been like a thing where I've been able to discuss positively and negatively and have like a back and forth about it. So that really did a lot for me to help me kind of understand how I really think about it and where I place it in the Halloween zeitgeist. That all being said, that Joe Grizzly scene is fucking awesome, and that's right up there with any of my Halloween scenes. So I'll go ahead and just count mine down from Haddonfield Nights. I already mentioned it. My favorite scene ever in a Halloween movie is Judy Greer when she shoots Michael and her reaction to everything that's going on. And just watching it again tonight, it was one of those, it's a good moment on our podcast where you put your pen down and just kind of watch the screen and smile, put your phone to the side and just kind of watch it all unfold. Second, never really gets old, and that being the end of Halloween 3. It's on the third channel. The third channel, oh my God, you got to stop it. You got to stop it. For the love of God, there's no more time. And my top moment, just because I remember just kind of relaying it to you and recounting it, and you were just like, okay, was... the end of the original Halloween, when I'm just like gushing about Loomis unloading the gun and continuing to fire. And the only time you really came in was when you agreed that Jamie Lee breaking down was good. And I was just like, and Loomis is just standing there and he goes and checks the body and the body's gone. And he looks around because he knows the evil's left. And you were just like, yeah, that happened. It was a thing that we saw. And then, of course, it's my final opportunity to set the record straight once and for all. She does not ask, was that the boogeyman? She affirms it was the boogeyman. And Donald Pleasance says, as a matter of fact, it was. So, Julio, what were your top 3 moments of Haddonfield Nights?
I'm glad you got to get that out of your chest one last time. I'm glad. Well, I knew that there was one that would never be on your list, and so I'm glad that we only have 2 crossovers, because my number 3 is Tom Atkins freaking out at the end of Season of the Witch. Of course.
Hell yeah.
Just his screaming. That is just Tom Atkins for president. God damn it. He's just great. My number 2, this is our big, this is where we differ, I'm sure. But to me, is Jamie Lee Curtis decapitating Michael at the end of H2O.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry, but
You're doubling down on the H2O, man.
I know. But it's just, to me, that was just so satisfying. And I love that it's not just that she decapitates him, but also that the movie ends. So we are left to just kind of imagine what the hell happened right after. How did she explain what happened after this? The cops show up. She stole a gun. She stole an ambulance, and then she just super murdered her. What is he? Her brother in this one? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Can't keep track. But anyway, the decapitation. I just like it. I know you were not. You in the episode you said, yeah, decapitations are no longer in vogue. Too old school.
I will give you credit though. Like I called out in the episode, the movie ending with her heavily breathing. That was really cool. That was amongst the cooler things in that movie that weren't LL Cool J.
And finally, it's your favorite moment in the Halloween franchise, and it's my number 1, which is Judy Greer's Gotcha. That was just fist pumping. It's just so well set up. Definitely didn't see it coming the first time that I watched the movie. In the like I mentioned in Contrarians Corner, in the big picture of things, I don't know that I'm 100% behind Laurie's master plan, but that moment is just really cool and it works. And I choose to watch it in isolation, not as part of the big massive plan. But just as in Judy Greer kind of like seizing the moment and figuring out how she's going to manipulate this guy into coming out of hiding so she can shoot him. So that's pretty cool, and she's great.
Absolutely. And there's many ways to read it, but it absolutely fantastic. Final conclusion before we get to our perennial plugs here on the Contrarians. I do need to plug one last time the book Taking Shape by Dustin McNeil and Travis Mullins, which provided me just fascinating insight throughout this whole journey we've done. And so many things that weren't even brought up in these episodes. Just really interesting and very, very almost scholarly coverage of the Halloween franchise and what it was, where it came from, what it became, all the behind-the-scenes shit. If you are a Halloween connoisseur, cannot recommend it enough, as well as Halloween 25 Years of Terror, which was a documentary released well over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago at this point. I actually ended up watching it again last night just to kind of recap to make sure there was nothing big I missed to discuss. It's like 80 minutes. It's really not. It's an independently made documentary from back in the mid-2000s. My favorite takeaway from it was when they are doing the section of Halloween 3, there's a talking head of Tom Atkins trying to explain the plot of the movie, and he can't stop laughing. He
Love it.
And at the end, they're doing like why is Halloween endured after 25 years? Or why do people still care? And Tom Atkins just says something to the effect of, I don't fucking know. He's fantastic. I did my searching because I like to read passages and entries and really prophetic things to kind of put a bow or a cap or a pin, an ending, a period on something. And for this, it's just me thanking you for allowing us to do this. These are my movies. This is my franchise. A lot of people, and it's Star Wars, and you kind of have the Marvel movies, and it's this has been like my entire life. I have a tie to the Halloween franchise. It's, as a little kid, me and my sister watching Halloween 2 in our living room in Waterville, Ohio, and the window in our living room was like at it was probably like 6 feet off the ground, so it was right at like my dad's head level. And I remember me and her sitting in front of the TV watching it, and him working in the yard and coming up to the window and saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And us just like screaming because we were so focused on the movie that it scared the shit out of us. And I've mentioned high school dates, college dates, the Halloween, the 2018 one, seeing that with Reed and Chris at the theater, and the Rob Zombie one, my experiences going to see that in the theater, and 4 and 5 as a kid, well up through high school and college, watching those. And I have all these memories. Like, I have this weird memory of back when I wasn't such a fucking fat ass at the gym, just like running on the treadmill, watching the original one on Halloween morning. And I have such a connection to these movies that in some aspects is probably unhealthy. I'm not going to lie about that, but I'm very happy that you allowed us to do this, and I thought it was a lot of fun. So, and anyone that listened to these for the first time or kept up with us the whole way through, I'm positive, having edited these, that my passion for these movies shined through. So that was a lot of fun. And to close, I will just say a happy Halloween to you all. And Julio, I think we'll go ahead and take this on home by first giving thanks to the Festive Years, who provide our opening and closing tracks. They always will kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of '99. Head on over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
If you like our logo, both our seasonal Haddonfield Nights logo, which I guess this is the last time you're going to see it, because starting next episode we'll just go back to our original. But our friend Hans Rothgieser, he did both of those, and he also has done some other work for us that will be revealed soon. But he is an artist, obviously. He's also a podcaster. He has a bunch of podcasts. It feels like every few months I talk to him and he's doing a new podcast, not to replace one of his other ones, it's just in addition to. And he has a full family. He has like a wife and kids. I don't know where he has the time, but he has 4 podcasts right now.
He sleeps 90 minutes a night.
Yes, I think one of his podcasts is just what he says while he's sleeping. He has most of his podcasts are in Spanish. He has Nación Combi, which is about Peruvian current affairs. He has Marginal, which is about economy, I guess kind of like on a high level. And he just started another one that's called Contante y Sonante, which is more like economy, like on a more accessible level. You can find him at any podcatcher. The links are on our show notes. He has a podcast in English called Living in Peru. That's about immigrants to Peru. He is also a writer, so he has a bunch of zombie novels that you can check out on his website. The website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. You can also reach to him on Twitter at mildemonios, or email him mildemonios@hotmail.com. He is a very, very busy guy, but he also likes to talk a lot. Not just, it's obvious, because of his podcast, but also because he has opinions. I love that I get to bring this up, Alex, because he listened to some episode. I think it was our episode of The Dilemma from a couple months ago. And I guess I referenced the fact that he liked Crazy Stupid Love. And
yes,
he messaged me.
He did, and I remember like, ugh.
Yeah, he messaged me and he's like, "Where do you get this that I like Crazy Stupid Love?" I'm like, "Because you told me, because we had a discussion and I was talking about how bad the movie was and you were defending it." And he was quiet for a moment and he's like, "Well, what year was that movie from? Because no, that's not a good movie." So it seems like Hans over the years has seen the light when it comes to Crazy Stupid Love, and that makes me happy.
Good man.
Maybe he'll see the light about the original Fly eventually. There's hope.
And we want to give a shout out to Zoe Perez for helping basically manage our social media at this point. Making a bunch of pretty Instagram posts for all of our followers, helping to spruce up our Facebook account as well. Zoe, we appreciate the work you do for us. All right, so that concludes Haddonfield Nights. We appreciate y'all being along this journey with us. If you have any thoughts on Halloween or any critiques, or just want to tell us we're wrong for whatever reason, I mean, Julio already said H2O was good, so we're pretty deep in the hole as it is. But don't hesitate to reach out with any feedback.
Thank you guys so much for supporting this and listening along. And that will conclude this for the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
The summer of 1999.